Hey guys. This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was Trained by Kurama. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 5, The Legacy. 2 days later, in the Hokage's office, in the warm radiance of the rising sun breaking into a certain office this morning, Kanehagaku's own third Hokage was found sitting behind his large and ornate desk. Now that things have settled down after Hizashi's unfortunate death, the grumbling old man was being forced to face his greatest enemy, the tall stacks of papers on the desk waiting for him to painstakingly go through. He was a little disappointed that he wasn't going to be reading his copy of the latest installment in his Students Ika series for a while longer. Before long, Hiruzen decided to give his sore writing hand a break and enjoy a mid-morning smoke. As he just got done preparing his long pipe with some new tobacco, the office's door banged open loudly to reveal one blue-eyed and whiskered blonde boy. Holding the pipe still halfway to his slightly open mouth, the old man's eyes followed the young boy's march into the office until he stood ramrod straight in front of the desk. Uzumaki Naruto had an uneasy expression on his face as he was clearly bothered by something. The Hokage, still holding his pipe, was wondering what was wrong when his surrogate grandson suddenly bowed deeply at the hips, surprising him quite a bit. "Hokage Gigi, I'm sorry for what I said the other day. It wasn't fair to you, especially after I learned more about what happened. I've finally understood this wasn't easy for you, and that you had no choice." He sincerely and regretfully spoke with his head still low. Hiruzen smiled gently as he put his pipe down. "It's alright, Naruto-kun. I believe how you feel about this is truly the correct way in my own opinion. I constantly wish that I could protect every single person under my command, and make sure they all got back to their loved ones," he replied gently, before sighing woefully. "Unfortunately, there are times where I must risk their lives on missions in order to protect the village as whole. Nothing would make me happier than to see every one of them return relatively unharmed from their missions, and that is the case most days. However, there are some days this did not happen, and that is the part of being a Hokage that I must accept. I don't like it, but it's what I must do in order to ensure the rest of this village's protection and safety. Even so, I shouldn't have said all of these awful things," Naruto insisted as he rose from his bow. The third waved his hand dismissively with a smile to show that there was nothing to forgive in the first place. "Well, that's over with. Tell me, how is it going with you lately? I hear you've been attacked by a wayward Hyuga the other day." The old man changed subjects, hoping to prolong his reprieve from the paperwork. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He wasn't sure anyone else other than Hayashi saw that incident, and he was confident the clan head wasn't the type to just go tell anyone about a troublemaking relative. He figured it was those two ANBU guarding him that recounted the scene to this man. Care to tell me why my followers didn't jump in when Niji beat my ass to within an inch of my life? He was about to strike a fatal blow, too. He asked bluntly in an irritated tone. The Hokage had to cough violently after he took a surprised intake of breath at this revelation. "I'm sorry about that, but they noticed Hayashi-san coming, so they decided to stay back and let the scene play out," he finally admitted after coughing a few times, before putting on a curious expression. "But how did you know they were there? You never gave any indication of noticing them up until now." Naruto shrugged and just pointed at his nose, then his right ear. "I can smell them, and I fall asleep to the sound of their heartbeats nearly every night. I noticed them a year ago or so," he stated matter-of-factly, and the old man was shocked to hear this. Even an Inuzuka would be hard-pressed to sniff out the hidden ANBU, the blonde then smirked. "My senses became even better since that night with my tenant, though. Like, for example," he turned to point at a spot by the giant bookcase near the office's door. "I could smell that guy over there had bacon and eggs for breakfast." He paused to sniff once. "Coffee too. Black, I'm guessing." He then turned to point at the office's lone sofa in the back corner. "That guy is pretty much dipped in sword cleaning oil. I guess he just likes swords a lot," he deduced before finally turning back to the Hokage and pointed up above at the tiled ceiling. "That woman up there used some very fruity-smelling shampoo. I guess she thought we're in a tropical area, but I sure as hell don't see any fruit trees around to cover up the smell," he finished. The Hokage sat there, feeling a little dumbstruck and impressed. For a brief moment, he believed this young boy would grow up to be a truly dangerous shinobi, before the apparently male ANBU in the ceiling hopped down to appear at the Hokage's side and cleared his throat. It was clear Naruto mistook him for a woman, and the boy let out a sheepish grin. "Sorry, Borsan, I thought you were a woman with that shampoo." "No offense, sir." He inclined his head slightly. The Bormast ANBU just shrugged his shoulders and mumbled something about had to use my girlfriend's shampoo before disappearing back into the ceiling. "I put a cube of sugar in my black coffee," a man's voice corrected from the hidden spot by the bookshelf. Naruto flinched and turned his head toward the voice. "Who uses just one cube? Even I know you put in at least 2 cubes to even notice any change in the taste, and I don't drink coffee yet," he defended. The Hokage gave a brief "it is kinda true" nod with a half-shrug at this statement. "I'm a woman," a feminine voice called out from the sofa, sounding clearly amused. Naruto comically twirled his head toward the sofa in shock before sighing. "Gimme a break, it's not like I've learned to tell the differences between men and women by smell yet." Hiruzen, having watched all of this, shook his head in amusement. "Well, this boy will at least be dangerous in the future with more practice, I suppose." The humor was short-lived when he heard something very uncomfortable. "Though you should clean your sword better since I can also smell blood all over you. You must have been fighting someone recently," Naruto innocently offered. The air in the room quickly chilled and cracked as the other men kept stone still, not wanting to make the slightest amount of noise, even breathing. They all knew she hadn't drawn blood from anyone for days. Naruto just cocked his head at the suddenly tense atmosphere. Restroom break!" A panicked female voice cried out before a whoosh of air was heard, signifying the unfortunate woman's departure from the office. "What the heck just happened?" the child inquired as he gazed confusedly at the profusely sweating Hokage. He didn't want to answer that and tried to shrug it off, acting as clueless as the blonde boy. It seemed to work when the boy returned the shrug and apparently moved on to another subject in his mind. The men in the room and a certain fox let out a silent sigh of relief. They definitely did not want to be the ones to tell a naive young child about the messy facts of life just yet. Taking a moment to clear his throat after that awkward situation, the aged leader spoke up again. "So, you didn't answer my question earlier? Is everything okay? Are you doing well with the training so far?" He pressed a little, and Naruto smiled broadly. "I'm doing great. I'm getting along with Hinata-chan and her dad. They're pretty nice once you get past the stoicism, or in Hinata-chan's case, her shyness. As for the training, the fox is working me hard and fixing up my body. See," he reported as he rolled up one of his t-shirt sleeves and flexed his bicep, which was already showing some significant improvement from just a week ago. The Hokage nodded in approval. "I'm glad to see you're working hard, and I hope you will continue to get along with the Hyugas. They will be very important allies if you remain friends with them," he advised. The blonde nodded in response. "I know it's important, but I want real friends. I'm not going to do this just to get favors," he declared. He didn't want to be thought of trying to get on anyone's good side for his own sake. "That's an excellent principle to follow. I am sure all of your friends will appreciate this," nodded the third. Naruto returned the nod with a wide grin and turned to leave. "Well, I guess that's all I got to say. The fox is grumbling for me to get back to exercising already, so I'll be going, Hokage-jiji." He waved over his shoulder before exiting. The Hokage smiled and set about getting back to the paperwork when he noticed a difference. "Did this stack of papers just increase in size when I wasn't looking?" he grumbled, directing a nasty glare at the stack that would have set it on fire if it were possible. A sweat drop formed in the air over by the bookshelf. "No, Hokage-sama. It's just your imagination, I think," the invisible ANBU's voice replied without any conviction. Hiruzen sighed wearily and grumbled for a moment with a small smirk, thinking a certain blonde did something. This only lasted until he felt something change in the atmosphere, and his eyes narrowed. He quickly waved his hand in a dismissive gesture. "Please step out for a moment. It seems I will be having a rather shy visitor soon." The ANBU quickly obeyed and their presences vanished, all trace of the previous humor gone. After a long moment's silence, the third steepled his hands on the desk as he calmly watched a murder of crows suddenly come into existence out of thin air and flapped around the office for a few seconds, before they all converged toward one spot in front of his desk. With a sharp caw, the crows then melded together into a young raven-haired human male already down on one knee with his head bowed slightly in salutation. His face was the epitome of stoicism. "Report," The powerful god of shinobi rumbled with his suddenly ruthless and steely dark eyes locking with a pair of sinister red eyes that displayed 3 black tomos in each iris. Hokage-sama, I bear unfortunate news, the man began in a calm and collected voice. Just outside, a blond boy was snickering mischievously as he went down the tower's stairs. How's that for a quick prank? I managed to sneak in an extra stack of papers when the old man wasn't looking. I would have loved to see the look on his face when he notices they were all requests from random villagers for my face to be engraved into the Hokage monument. Naruto thought while Kurama was chuckling deeply in his head. Not bad, boy. It's not the greatest, but it's good enough. Let's get back to your exercises, the fox ordered as her container began stretching at the bottom of the stairs. Hey, Kurama, I was just thinking on what happened with Hokage Gigi and that woman in the office. Did I say something wrong? He inquired of his tenant, who was now sweating nervously and silently cursing his naive curiosity. It's probably nothing. Anyway, your body's not going to get any stronger as long as you're standing here thinking about useless things. Let's go, she urged, hoping he would forget about this subject soon enough. Puzzled, Naruto just shrugged and got on the streets to finish jogging, wondering why adults, and a demon fox, acted so strange sometimes. Soon in a certain apartment, Midarashi Enko, a 15-year-old kunoichi who was just promoted to chunin, groggily rubbed the sleep out of her eyes with a loud yawn, before she then stretched her entire body in her bed with a contented groan. She was happy she usually drew the night shifts in most of her duties, since she definitely wasn't a morning person at all. After stretching, she slowly got out from under the blanket, revealing a nearly nude body in only a pair of white and purple striped panties. She didn't pay this any mind since it was her preference to sleep that way. She moved over to the closet in her sparsely decorated bedroom. The only personal touches in her room were the 2 framed photos on the nightstand by the bed. One photo was of Enko getting congratulations and hugs from one of her few friends, Yuhi Kurenai, when she was promoted to chunin a few months ago. The other photo was a simple one of her smiling genuinely, which was a rarity for her these days, next to her equally smiling surrogate sister and roommate. The young purple-haired teen finished getting dressed for the day when she put on a tight white t-shirt with a random logo on the front, and a black miniskirt. The shirt did little to hide her still-growing breasts, which were a very impressive size for her age. She finished the outfit off with getting her long purple hair done up in the usual fan ponytail style, and putting the hitayate on under her long bangs that almost completely hid it from view. She then moved into the kitchen to quickly eat a breakfast of toast and oatmeal. Afterward, she flopped down on her stomach on the living room couch with a heavy sigh, and let her mind wander for a while. It was 3 years ago when she was rescued from that dank abandoned lab. She still hadn't recovered any of the memories she lost during the 3 years she was supposedly with her old sensei, Orochimaru. Not even the top mind arts user, the Yamanaka clan head Inoichi, was able to help her find any trace of those memories. Afterward, the unfortunate young woman was left to deal with picking up pieces of her life, made difficult by the combination of suddenly skipping 3 years, at least in her mind, into a developing teenage girl's body, and the stigma of having been an apprentice to the village's most hated traitor. Her first experience with that stigma was the continued disgruntlement of the male ANBU escorting her from that abandoned lab to Konoha. Although he did keep silent under strict orders from the other ANBU escort, she easily felt him staring at her with murder and disgust in his eyes. It grew worse when she arrived in the village and news spread that an ex-apprentice of the traitor Orochimaru was in custody. By the time she reached the torture and intelligence building, villagers and shinobi were already lining the path screaming insults and throwing debris at her. It took a massive dose of killing intent from the female ANBU escort to finally scare the crowd away. The interrogation was relatively tame because it was already verified by Inoichi that Enko truly did lose her memories and was telling the truth that she had no intention of betraying the village along with her ex-sensei. Yet, this did not keep Marino Ibiki, the head of interrogation, from asking her truly invasive and personal questions. The only good thing from that miserable day was the Hokage himself dropping by and assuring her that he did believe her wholeheartedly, and that if she still wished to enter the shinobi force, she was allowed to do so. That put him number 2 on her list, right behind the female ANBU who rescued her and comforted her on the way back to Konoha. After being allowed out of questioning, she was escorted to an apartment by the same female ANBU that saved her. Upon arriving, the young teen was surprised to find Nico removing her mask, revealing a beautiful and mature-looking young woman with slatted chocolate brown eyes. Flashback Anko was rather bewildered by the female ANBU inexplicitly taking her cat mask off in the middle of the living room of the apartment that she was taken to. "Wah, Nico-san?" The young preteen managed to blurt out upon seeing her savior's beautiful face framed by long purple hair that seemed just a bit more vibrant in its shine than her own. She swore they shared family blood considering just how similar they looked. "I go by that name when I'm working. Whenever I'm not wearing the mask, you may call me Yugao. Yuzuki Yugao." The revealed woman smiled gently as she introduced herself. "Okay, Yugao-san, but why did you just reveal yourself?" Anko could not get it in her head that someone was actually nice to her after the last few days of dealing with nothing but anger and misery. "It makes sense for me to officially introduce myself as your new roommate, Anko-chan. I studied your file and I noticed you have no relative to stay with anywhere near here. Considering how the past few days went since you entered this village, I feel you could use someone to help you through this horrible time. I also hope we will come to be good friends someday as well," Yugao offered sincerely. This stunned Anko into silence as she stared at her new roommate wide-eyed for a few long minutes. The 16-year-old ANBU shifted uncomfortably under the stare. Perhaps she was wrong about Anko wanting someone to help her? She almost didn't hear the younger teen's response in her growing internal panic. "TT, thank you," Anko barely whispered as she shuffled over to the older woman, her arms spreading out slowly. As she got closer, tears were beginning to stream down her cheeks like waterfalls. When she finally clutched her new roommate into a crushing hug, she released a loud wail of misery and anguish. The dam finally broke wide open for one Mitarashi Anko as she just let out all the negative emotions she held in over the last few days of hell. Yugao had to hold in a sniffle as she hugged her now proclaimed little sister back tightly. Her hand then instinctively began raking through the young girl's purple hair gently as Anko continued to sob and wail into her savior's chest for what seemed like eternity. End flashback. That was the last time Anko allowed herself to cry that much. She swore to herself that day that no matter how shitty her life got, she'd never let Orochimaru win by taking the easy way out. She would go out fighting, never letting being tainted get her down, but it was hard to avoid thinking differently many days. Things never got easy for her after that day, even with Yugao's constant support. Countless nights since then were interrupted by extreme pain radiating from the curse mark that snake bastard left on her neck, and the horrific nightmares it caused as well. When she enlisted as a genin, her teammates and sensei never let her live down the fact that she was associated with a traitor, and was mocked constantly. It was a miserable 2 years for her, even though she was clearly superior in skills to her teammates, and even matched the Jounin sensei in some aspects. Things got a little better when she met Yuhi Kurinai from another team. The beautiful raven-haired young woman did not immediately judge her, and they clicked as friends quickly. Kurinai, along with Yugao, did help alleviate some of the pain and misery the young genin felt at the hands of her team. It was only because of these two that she managed to remain sane long enough with her team. Her break finally came when they were nominated for their Chunin exams because her two worthless teammates finally garnered enough meager skills for their arrogant Jounin sensei to actually consider them ready. With nothing but pure luck and strategy, she pretty much single-handedly pulled her team into the finals. She was the only one out of 3 to have earned the Chunin rank, thanks to the fact the exam was in Iwagakure, and the judges there weren't biased against her past association with Orochimaru. Even then, her own people were going to block her promotion based on drummed-up charges by her former team that she sabotaged her two teammates somehow. It was only when the Hokage angrily stepped in that Anko was assured of moving up. That endeared him to her even more, and she would only obey him completely out of anyone in this entire military force. It still occasionally took him ordering her to listen to her superiors before she would do her assigned duties properly. Things got a little better for her as a Chunin, at least. She still had to deal with her squad mates' prejudice, but it was more manageable for her since it wasn't as personal as it was with her former genin teammates, who still have yet to get promoted last time she heard. The fact that she switched squads often helped to keep anything from going too far. Her life in the village became more manageable as well. The villagers' hatred for her did not disappear, but they were a lot less intense than when she first returned to the village from her rescue. Right now, she merely got open glares and hateful mutterings from everyone, and disgusting leers from some men. She may have been associated with a traitor, but it did not stop men from thinking she was beautiful, especially with her being an early bloomer. They just automatically decided she was easy because of Orochimaru. She proved them wrong by introducing her foot to their balls. It still didn't stop them from coming back more aggressively, however. She ended up having to be harsher. Some of these times still had her snickering to this day, since they usually ended up with her standing before the Hokage for a reprimand on sending her snakes where the sun definitely did not shine. She swore to herself she'd make it to Jounin quickly. That would allow her to work more solo missions, and take command of squads so she could at least keep the prejudiced fools in line. It also would give her a measure of deterrence against most of the village's male population because of how dangerous the rank would have signified her skill level to be. Anko was jolted out of her thoughts by the front door banging open. She glanced up to see her older roommate, 19-year-old Yugao, stumbling into the apartment as if she had been turned into a zombie. The off-duty NBU slowly unlatched her sword from her back and removed her mask with a disgruntled growl. She then tossed them onto a chair rather carelessly. At this point, Anko noticed her surrogate sister's downcast expression as the older woman unceremoniously flopped onto a chair at the dining table with her head burrowing into her arms with a groan. "Something happened today, Yugao-ne? I thought you got the easy shift this time with guarding the old man?" She carefully inquired as she sat herself upright on the sofa, a little worried if something happened to the third. "I did get the easy shift. I even got the comfortable spot on the sofa today. All I had to do for the entire morning was to just sit there and be invisible." Yugao mumbled as she raised her head from her arms, her face still downcast and blushing with embarrassment. "So, something clearly happened. So, it came early," Yugao vaguely said, expecting her roommate to get the meaning. Anko had to wince in sympathy. It took her a long time to get used to the idea of a girl's body suddenly bleeding and cramping up painfully once every month. That was one of the most jarring effects of her suddenly transitioning from her 9-year-old self to a 12-year-old preteen already beginning puberty when she lost her 3 years of memories. This got her very embarrassing conversations with her surrogate sister about periods, puberty, and sex for many weeks afterward. Not to mention the awkward visits to a specialized medic needing just for checking on her reproductive health. She only just had gotten used to the idea of becoming a woman recently. Ouch. Lose your favorite pair? She wondered, expecting this reason to be why Yugao was depressed. It was not like anyone was going to be able to tell with her dark-colored ANBU-style pants. No. That's probably the only good thing from this. I didn't lose any pair because I was told just when it began, the older woman vaguely said, still looking depressed. Oh, I guess that's fine. Wait, what did you say? You were told? Anko's eyebrows shot up in amazed incredulity. Yes, Anko-chan, I was told that I just started my period. Yugao was now trembling. By this 8-year-old blonde boy with a better sense of smell than the entire Inuzuka clan. Right there. In the goddamn Hokage's office. With the freaking Hokage and 2 of my comrades within earshot in the same fucking room. She cried out pitifully before slamming her head back into her arms on the table. So now 3 people aside from Haiku and know my cycle. She mumbled dully from her arms before perking back up with an irritated expression. If Hokage-sama assigns me easy missions this time next month out of concern for me, I'm going to stab him repeatedly with my sword, I swear to Kami. The purple-haired ANBU growled. Despite her roommate's misery, Anko had to stifle a chuckle. It wasn't like the usually composed Yugao to go off the handle. So how did the brat look after you've sliced him into pieces for his offense? She teased. Yugao raised an eyebrow at her roommate's assumption that she would do something like that. I didn't do anything to him. Besides, he had no idea what he was saying. He thought I was fighting someone and suggested I clean up because he smelled the blood. She grumbled with a shudder at the last word. Anko winced, wondering just how that particular and perfectly natural body function smelled to any sensitive nose. He's an adorable and naive little boy with those whisker marks on his cheeks and beautiful blue eyes. I could never stay mad at him even if I tried, she admitted with a small smile before sighing dejectedly. I'll be okay. I'll probably forget about all this after a week. It just was embarrassing today, that's all. Anko raised an eyebrow at her surrogate sister's impression of the boy. Yugao generally didn't care for kids because she considered them brats, and did not intend to have any kid of her own for a long time. If she ever got around to it, that is. This kid must have been someone special to endear himself to Yugao rather easily. Who's this kid then? Must have been super skilled or high-class VIP if he can just barge into the old man's office, she asked offhandedly. Yugao smiled at her roommate's curiosity. No, just a kid that Hokage-sama considers to be his surrogate grandson. His name's Uzumaki Naruto, and I can tell he will grow up to be a very interesting, and probably amazing, shinobi. It's almost too bad he's not close to your age, at least for the time being. You two would get along great when he becomes older and more mature. Hell, despite his naivety, he's mature beyond his age. Yugao sadly said, knowing exactly the reason why he had to grow up so quickly. Really? What kind of history did he have? Anko inquired, but her roommate shook her head soberly. Sorry, Anko-chan. I trust you, but that's a S-class secret that only Jounin and ANBU are allowed to know. You'll just have to hurry up and get promoted to understand everything about Naruto. She replied mysteriously. Even though Anko had on an impatient scowl, she just shrugged this off and got up to put on her black kunoichi sandals. Sorry to hear about your morning, Yugane. I'll leave you alone to wallow in your humiliation while I go out to kill time, she declared with a teasing grin. Yugao just stuck her tongue out at her roommate before returning her head to rest on the table with a groan. Anko chortled briefly as she stepped out the front door. Naruto on a random street in the village. Naruto was panting heavily as he continued to run at a quick pace up the street. He was already used to the open glares from the people on the street, so they didn't even register. However, with his superior hearing, he could hardly ignore the whispering about the demon brat. Some of the things he heard almost made him stumble over in exasperation at their idiocy, like how he was training to get stronger so he could destroy the village. That they were somewhat cowering while muttering that they needed to hurry up and kill him quickly almost made him laugh. However, he was encouraged to hear some positive comments from some of the younger people, like how he saved the Hyuga heiress, and would a demon have done that? They also began to notice how he still remained cordial to them despite being openly shunned. He had to smile. Hearing just one of these positive comments made it worth hearing 1,000 insults from the others. He was so distracted by his happy thoughts that he did not notice someone standing in his way. He slammed into the person's leg hard and bounced back onto his back on the hard ground with a pained grunt. Before he could apologize, a large man's hand suddenly grabbed onto the boy's collar and lifted him up harshly. Naruto let out a yelp of discomfort and opened his eyes to stare into the hateful glare of a large male villager. Naruto knew this man as one of those villagers that were most vocal and aggressive against his continued existence. "How dare you try to hurt me, you damn demon brat?" the man hissed harshly. The boy knew he was in for it, but he had to try to calm the man down. He put both hands up in a placating gesture. "I'm sorry. I wasn't watching where I was going. I was just jogging," he tried to say calmly. The man just shook the boy hard for a few seconds. "Don't think you can trick me with that nice act. I know you're secretly training to destroy this village in the future. Well, I'm going to do everyone here a favor and put an end to that right now," the man declared to the other villagers gathering around him as he drew out a long knife from his belt. The villagers gasped, and some of them cheered. "I'm going to make you suffer," the man whispered darkly as he moved the tip of the knife to the blonde's face. Naruto had no choice but to close his eyes with gritted teeth, and just hope that Kurama, who was already roaring angrily at the man in his head, would help him survive this until someone interfered. He was still too weak to even defend himself against a villager. However, he never had the chance to test his quick recovery ability once again as he heard a yelp of pain, and he was suddenly dropped. Landing hard on his butt, he cried out at this sudden action as he opened his eyes. He was surprised to see a beautiful purple-haired teenage girl with pupilless light brown eyes gripping the large man's knife hand in place as if it was nothing. Mitarashi Anko glared harshly up at the nervous man, who stared at the young girl fearfully before his face began to grimace in pain as the girl tightened her grip on the man's hand. Naruto could hear the slight cracking of bones in the man's hand for a second until he heard a cry of pain. At the sound, the young girl finally let go and the man stumbled back clumsily, dropping the knife in the process. Clutching at the fractured hand with a pained grimace, the man glared balefully at the purple-haired girl. You fucking bitch! Of course a traitor's whore would protect the demon brat!" the man spat out, only to wilt under Anko's glare and her rather impressive killing intent. "You'd better get it into your idiotic brain if you know what's good for you, and the same goes for all of you." Anko swept her arm out to indicate the other villagers surrounding them. "I'm a kunoichi of this village and my job is to do what I think need to be done to keep the peace and protect its people. I just saw a cute little boy being harassed and about to be cut up by a pathetic retard that seemed to think he was out to destroy the entire village." The purple-haired girl laughed mirthlessly for a few seconds before pointing at the large man. "You'd have been more of a danger to this village than this boy could ever be if stupidity is actually contagious. In fact, I should probably lock you up anyway for public safety." She spoke with a malicious grin that sent shivers down everyone's spines. After a moment of holding that expression, she then let out a suffering sigh. I really don't need to deal with this crap, so get the hell out of here before I set my snakes on you. And that goes for all of you too! She raged while sending her killing intent everywhere, terrifying everyone around her. In the next instant, it was just a blonde boy and her alone on the street. Whoa! Naruto muttered in amazement. The teenage girl turned around and gave a silly victory hand gesture before bending down to offer her hand for the blonde to grab onto. The boy gladly took the proffered hand. Thanks, One-E-san! You saved me! He said gratefully upon getting to his feet. Anko could only grin cockily and rubbed a finger under her nose. It's no biggie. I don't know why they think you're going to destroy the village. You're pretty cute, especially with those whiskers, she teased as she bent over to pinch and stretch one of the boy's cheeks. Naruto could only cry out in indignity as he swatted the hand away. The girl then narrowed her eyes as if she realized something. Wait a minute, blonde, whiskers, and gorgeous blue eyes. Are you Uzumaki Naruto? She suddenly asked. Naruto flinched in surprise. Why yeah, I am. How did you know that, One-E-san? The boy cocked his head in confusion. I heard it from a little purple cat. Did you know you embarrassed a young woman this morning, Gaki? Anko pointed out, and then smirked upon seeing the blonde looking seriously affronted. No way. I didn't do anything to any woman on purpose. The boy huffed with crossed arms, thinking someone else out there was slandering his good name. Nah, it's alright. You didn't realize. However, I have a piece of advice for you, and it's very imperative you listen to this, Gaki. Anko leaned in to speak in a low voice. Naruto, putting on a curious fox-like expression, brought one of his ears in close. Gaki, I hear you have that great sense of smell, and it's pretty useful, I'm sure. However, in the future, if you ever smell any kind of blood on a woman and she doesn't look like she's bleeding from anywhere visible, it's probably very important for your sake that you do not bring it up with her out of nowhere, especially with people around. The teen whispered vaguely, confusing the boy even more. Something like that happened this morning, but I don't understand, One-E-san. If I smell blood, that means someone's hurt and bleeding, right? Naruto tried to press for clarification. The older girl quickly shushed him. In a way, you might be right about us occasionally hurting. However, it's extremely personal for all women. I'm doing you a huge favor by asking you to just ignore that scent and don't ever mention it. Don't even think about it. You were lucky the woman this morning didn't cut you up out of anger, the girl warned sternly with a serious expression. Naruto cocked his head with squinted fox-like eyes in bewilderment. Yugaone's right, he is so adorable! She squealed in her mind. Even though I'm now smelling it mixed with snakes on you, One-E-san? The blonde innocently dropped the bombshell. A cold chill went down Anko's spine as her pupils shrank in shock. She didn't even note the fact he smelled snakes on her as well. Excuse me for a moment. And stay here, Gaki. She mechanically spoke as she straightened up and walked awkwardly into a nearby alley to hide herself from anyone's sight. A long moment of silence followed for the very confused young boy before an enraged yell exploded from the alley, scaring him into falling on his backside again. God fucking damn it, these were my favorite. Naruto was trembling with wide eyes at the girl's sudden temper. Another long moment of silence followed before he saw the teenage girl emerge from the alley, her eyes closed and cheeks bright red with embarrassment. Anko purposely walked right up to the boy and bent down at her hips, looming dangerously over the terrified boy. Yes, Gaki, don't even mention it to me from now on whenever we meet again in the future. She slowly ground out with one of her eyes twitching and her cheeks still bright red. Okay, I won't say anything about this to any woman ever, One-E-san. Naruto promised frantically. He wondered what the hell was going on, but if this was a big deal for women, he decided he should leave this to them from now on. He had a feeling he'd be better off this way anyway. Very good. Now, I want to go home, change, and get some dango, so I'll see you around the village once in a while, okay? Anko chirped in fake cheerfulness with a strained smile before turning around to walk off, dejectedly waving goodbye over her shoulder. Naruto, even though he was still confused, waved back anyway. Okay, this is too much trouble for me. I'm never going to bring that up with any girl from now on. He sighed as he thought this to his tenant. Good, because that would save your life, and mine by proxy, from enraged and irrational human females. The fox replied with clear relief, glad this subject was closed for good, at least for a few more years. The naive young boy shrugged before he began stretching his legs a bit to continue his run. Some weeks later in Naruto's apartment, Naruto entered his apartment, still lightly panting from his latest round of exercises. 20 laps around the village with 3 sets of 100 crunches, sit-ups, and squats every 4 laps. He then ended it all with 4 sets of 20 pull-ups and 10 100m dashes to get his blood really pumping before cooling down on his walk home. Wow, I keep saying this, but you really work fast. I know I'd have died if I did all of that just 2 weeks ago. Naruto spoke internally as he poked at some of the hardening muscles on his body. I'd be lying if I said I expected you to reach this point already. At this rate, I might be finished bringing your body up to appropriate levels in just a couple weeks, much earlier than I anticipated. Kurama admitted. She wondered if it was the elite blood of those 2 clans in him that allowed him to adapt and mold his body so quickly for anything. In any case, this amount of exercising is more than enough to get you into shape quickly, so we'll keep the routine the same until we move on to the next level of your training, she suggested. Naruto nodded as he took his sweat-drenched t-shirt off and began preparing some lunch. This time it was a sub sandwich packed with meat and vegetables to give him plenty of protein and nutrition. While the boy was eating, Kurama was deep in her thoughts about how best to reveal some important information to her container. She knew he wasn't going to be happy, but she felt it needed to be done. Just as the young blonde finished his delicious lunch, he heard a somehow timid-sounding knocking at the front door. Naruto frowned in confusion since he wasn't expecting any guest. He went up to the door to open it slowly, and then smiled broadly. "Hinata-chan! How are you? What are you doing here?" He greeted cheerfully to a cute indigo-haired girl standing stock still in a purple kimono. She was holding a small and cute pink drawstring purse that had a white floral pattern. Her lavender eyes were wide open in shock because she was seeing her young friend standing in front of her totally shirtless. Her cheeks quickly became inflamed with embarrassment. She had never seen any male, even her father, topless or beyond. For some reason, she thought Naruto looked fantastic with his developing muscles. One would hardly think the young blonde's body looked like a normal 8-year-old boy's. She had to turn away from the confused boy lest she'd have fainted from shock and embarrassment. "Ayano, I'm sorry and Naruto-kun, BB but see could YUP put a shirt on, please?" The girl stuttered worse than ever at this moment, though she felt somewhat disappointed at having to ask him to do this. The boy cocked his head and squinted fox-like in confusion, and then glanced down before snapping his head up with his blue eyes wide in surprise. He then quickly retreated back into the apartment. After a moment of awkward waiting for the young Hyuga, Naruto finally came back with a clean shirt on and an embarrassed smile. "Hee, sorry that was rude of me, Hinata-chan. I forgot I took it off when I got back from my morning routine. Anyway, how are you? How did you find your way here?" he asked sheepishly of his new guest. Hinata fidgeted nervously and began poking her 2 index fingers together. "I apologize for coming here you unannounced. But after that terrible event the other D-Day and we haven't heard from you since beforehand, I wanted to check if you were alright. I asked F-Father to allow me to visit you, and he approved. He then had one of our G-guards escort me here. He's outside," she explained haltingly. Naruto was not too surprised that a powerful man like Hayashi knew his address. That, and it wasn't like the demon brat's address was a secret in the village anyway. He wondered about the terrible event though. Does this event have something to do with the Uchiha massacre I heard about? He deduced. Hinata responded with a quick nod of her head. Yes. It's terrible how it just happened out of nowhere, and Uchiha Itachi left only one boy our age alive. You live only a short distance from the Uchiha district, and I was worried. She trailed off, her cheek growing red again. Naruto smiled gently at his new friend's caring nature. "As you can see, Hinata-chan, I'm alright. How about this? Let's go for a quick walk. I want to check out the district if that's okay with you," he suggested. Hinata put on a small smile and nodded slightly, happy to be doing something with her new friend. The blonde quickly slipped his sandals on before closing the door. "Alright. Let's get going," he declared, but not before turning to a seemingly empty space next to the door and inclined his head slightly. "Good work, Anbu-san," he chirped cheekily, and Hinata followed suit and bowed to a different spot on the other side of the door. "Ano, please take care of us, Anbu-san." She spoke very politely, not even registering the fact that there were 2 Anbu guarding Naruto for some reason. 2 huge sweat drops formed in the air out of nowhere as the 2 children walked down the stairs out of the building. "Those fucking nose and eyes, How can we even hide from them at all, Sparrow? Grumbled a male voice in the spot, to which Naruto acknowledged. At least the brats aren't making it difficult for us, Lizard. Another voice, this one female, muttered dejectedly as the two masked ANBU appeared out of thin air and jumped to the rooftops, preparing to follow their charge. Back on the streets with the children, they were walking shoulder by shoulder toward the Uchiha district as a Hyuga escort followed a fair distance behind them, keeping his pale eyes moving around for any sign of trouble. The escort also discreetly nodded his head at the two ANBU he saw with his Byakugan up on the roof. They returned the gesture. Hinata could tell something was wrong. She noticed nasty glares directed at her. No, only at the blonde next to her. This confused her greatly. Did he do something to upset the village with a prank gone too far? Even as she thought that, she knew that wasn't the case. She could tell the glares of disgust and hatred she saw from the villagers went far beyond that. Growing angry at this blatant lack of respect toward her friend, she glanced at the blonde next to her, expecting him to be bothered by the glares and returning them defiantly. Much to her surprise, he wasn't doing anything. He was being deliberately oblivious to this treatment, and she wondered why her usually straightforward and brave friend was letting this pass by without raising a stink. She could only deduce that those villagers had been doing this for so long that he simply had grown used to this, and it now became a habit to ignore all this. How can this be? Why would a kind person like Naruto-kun get this kind of treatment? She thought in despair for her friend. Naruto, as if reading her mind, turned his head toward her and shot her an assuring smile. Don't worry, Hinata-chan. They're just being petty and pissed about something I had no control over a long time ago. He explained calmly, with that smile still on his face. The Hyuga heiress could tell it was forced for her sake. She wouldn't even return the smile as she glared down at the ground. Naruto-kun, can you tell Dash? Her question was interrupted by her friend's loud voice. All right. We're here, he quickly declared as he sped off toward an unique-looking gate allowing access to a certain part of Konoha. Hinata sighed in defeat. She knew that he interrupted on purpose just now, and decided she would have to wait on that question for later. She caught up with the blonde who was staring in through a large closed iron gate into the Uchiha district. The entire area in front of the two children was eerily quiet, and it definitely didn't feel right. A place large should at least have had loud noises and countless signs of busy activity at this time of the day. Right now, there was absolutely nothing that told these two children that an entire clan was even living here before the terrible event. The empty streets and buildings were sparkling clean, as if they had to be scrubbed down for a reason. The two children had to swallow at the implication of that notion. I see you two have decided to satisfy your curiosity about the tragic event here. A calm voice spoke up smoothly from behind Naruto and Hinata. They twirled around to face Hyuga Hayashi gazing down at them in his usual clan head's robes. Father! Hinata jumped at the sight of her father. Hayashi-sama, what brings you this way on this day? Naruto bowed slightly. Hayashi returned the polite bow. I was walking this way toward home from a meeting with Hokage-sama. I happened to see you, and decided I would collect my daughter for the trip home. Hayashi spoke with a nod to the Hyuga escort, allowing the man to leave on his own for the clan compound, now relieved by the clan head. Father! Hinata trailed off sadly at her father's implication that she was to go home with him soon. Naruto smiled and scratched the back of his head. Don't worry, Hinata-chan. I was going to have you go home after this. I have something I need to do today, he assured. Hinata could only nod in disappointment. But man, this is really weird. I wasn't particularly liked by the Uchiha clan, but it's just strange to see an entire district with absolutely no life in it all of a sudden. Naruto murmured to no one in particular as he turned back to face the blocked gate. I wonder if it could have been avoided. Hayashi mysteriously whispered, and the blonde caught that. Hayashi-sama? My apologies, but I should not speak ill of the dead, even though my clan and the Uchiha clan were rivals up until recently. The clan had said carefully. Naruto nodded his head, respecting the man's desire to not speak any more of this. I am afraid my daughter and I will need to take our leave. I hope to see you soon again before long, Uzumaki-san. Hayashi and Hinata bowed their goodbyes before heading off toward the compound, leaving behind a waving Naruto. Alright, Kurama, they're gone. Why do you want me to ditch Hinata-chan all of a sudden? Naruto quizzed his tenant. Because there's something we need to discuss, and I'd rather that child don't get in the way of that. The demon fox replied bluntly. Sounds pretty serious. Naruto thought offhandedly as he continued to stare into the empty district. Oi, Fox, how do you feel about this? I know you got some strife against people with these Sharingan. He wondered, and Kurama let out a scoff. They had it coming. This clan was cursed, destined to be exterminated one day. It was only just a matter of when since the very first day the clan formed. It was rare to see any Uchiha that is different from the two main types I've observed. The first type are the ones that grew arrogant and complacent with their eyes, and relied on them so much they easily got killed in battle early in their lives. The other type desire power so much they would do anything possible to gain an upper hand. I'd keep an eye on that Uchiha brat who survived this. I'd bet he will look for power anywhere possible for revenge against the one who did this, and he might not hesitate to get rid of those that get in his way. The fox warned, and Naruto nodded his head soberly. Let's go. I'm done looking at this disgusting reminder of that accursed clan. We need to get to the training field the old fart gave us. She finished dismissively. Her host nodded in the affirmative before making his way toward Konoha's training fields. Hayashi and Hinata, heading home. Father! Hinata quietly called out, catching her father's attention. Hayashi slightly turned his head to imply he was listening as they continued their walk. When I was walking with Naruto-kun, I have discovered that he deals with looks of hate and disgust from the villagers all around us. They look similar to what I am getting in the compound, only it was much worse for Naruto-kun. I cannot believe he is someone that has done something to deserve the entire village hating him so much. Am I wrong? Hinata spoke seriously, all traces of her stuttering and low confidence gone. She was gazing up at her father with quiet anger in her pale eyes for the villagers. Hayashi had to admit inwardly he was growing prouder of his daughter with each passing day. I have said once before that this is Uzumaki-san's secret to tell you. But I shall assure you now that it was not his fault. Do not fret too much for that child because he is much stronger than you realize. He is going out to prove to the entire village that he is not the person they think him to be. Just like you are trying to prove to our clan that you deserve to be considered for the position of the clan head in the future. He spoke evenly as they approached the compound's gate. Hinata nodded in understanding, though she was still rather upset with the villagers. Someday, she'd find out this was about, and then she would make sure to assure her friend she was never going to be one of these people ever. Training field number 42. So this is the training field I'm to use for the next 5 years or so. Naruto announced to no one in particular as he walked up to the center of a large clearing in the middle of a dense forest. He could make out a large and deep ravine cutting through the earth at the back of the training field. Looks good. We'll put it to good use soon enough. For now, we just need to talk in your mindscape away from any possible distraction. It's time for you to fix up this shithole, and then we will have a serious discussion about some information you need to know. Kurama spoke her intentions. Naruto nodded his head in affirmation and went over to the center of the clearing to sit down into a meditative pose. Good. Just do what I've told you, clear your mind of unnecessary thoughts, and focus on a small tugging you should be feeling within your abdomen. Visualize yourself grabbing onto that sensation like a rope. You should be pulled in here with me after that. The fox instructed. Naruto quickly followed the instructions and, after a few long minutes, he began to feel the tugging. He imagined himself grabbing onto that with his imaginary hands. In the next instant, he was being pulled in within himself. He opened his eyes to find himself in the room he shared with Kurama the night they met. He noted the massive fox, still in the same position that he left her. She was looking down at him with her crimson eyes, her expression impassive. He had to admit he was awed with her impressive size and presence before him. She looked truly majestic. That's flattering. Kurama snorted slightly with a smirk. Naruto facepalmed hard for having forgotten she could read his mind any time, and put on a sheepish grin with chuckle. It's true anyway. So let's get started on changing this place. I can't believe this is what my mind looks like now. He remarked with a scowl as he glanced around the room. When left alone, it reflects the acclamation of all the experiences you've had in your life up until now. Since you have experienced mostly negative events and emotions until recently, this is how this place ended up looking like this. I should inform you this mindscape was in a much worse shape until just before you began making friends and experiencing more positive events. It's hard to believe, but conditions here definitely did improve significantly since then. The fox explained calmly before moving on. Go ahead, imagine up what we've discussed earlier. Just concentrate hard enough and this mindscape will obey your will. Naruto nodded before clapping his hands together in a snake seal, his fingers intertwined tightly as he seemed to pray. After a moment, there was a loud rumble and Kurama noted her side of the room beginning to crumble as the walls cracked and fell apart in large pieces. The walls then all collapsed away to reveal a beautiful and majestic green forest hidden behind them with sunlight shining down in bright beams through the tight canopy high above. The trees were so tall and gigantic that Kurama looked like a normal-sized fox relative to the size of one of these trunks. Glancing through the bars, the fox saw the area around Naruto begin to rapidly sprout lush grass in large patches while the walls on his side of the bars crumbled away as well, revealing an enormous plain stretching as far as her crimson eyes could see, broken up only by a sparkling blue river running through it in the distance. Kurama had to admit she was very impressed at the scope of this boy's imagination. He was trying his best to make her very comfortable here in this seal, and she appreciated that. The only thing that remained of the old room was the giant iron bars sitting between the fox and the boy. Even with the walls crumbling away, the bars just stretched far into the distance in both directions, and they disappeared high up into the sky, never revealing how truly tall they were. Naruto stepped up to the obstacle and patted a hand on it. "Oh, I think I can get this out of the way. I have a feeling the seal just has to be near you, and it's not really needed to keep us apart since I could have just walked through them any time. So with that, tell me what form you'd like the seal to be. I doubt you'd want a collar." He had to pause at Kurama's angry growl at the thought of being collared like a common pet. "So that's out of the question. How about a ring for one of your fingers, bracelet for your wrist, or something for your tails? An earring? Anything you can think of. I'll try to change these bars into that. Just a ring for one of my fingers will suffice." The fox threw that out after a moment's thought. The blonde nodded, before beginning to concentrate hard on the bars. After a long moment of silence, a loud rumbling was heard when the bars seemed to be slowly twisting and shrinking into itself. After several minutes of concentrating, the bars were finally compressed into one giant lumpy ball of steel. A loud screeching sound emitted from the lump as Naruto grunted with some visible effort to concentrate on reshaping the seal into something wearable. It was several minutes of adjustments, and nearly popped blood vessels before the duo finally saw a simple ring dull gray in color emerge from the shaping process. It was now floating in midair between the two of them, and Naruto seemed to be thinking with squinted eyes and a hand on his chin, as if he was staring at the ring like an artist. He suddenly snapped his fingers and, with a somewhat comedic ding, the ring instantly changed colors to now match Kurama's bright crimson fur. "How's that, huh?" The blonde chuckled, panting lightly as he was a little winded from concentrating so hard for so long. "At least it's not a collar. This will do, and I will most likely forget it's even there after a few days." Kurama grumbled as she snatched the ring out of the air with her right hand and began to put it on her left hand. First she tried the index before moving on to the middle, and when that didn't fit either she tried one more finger. She was a little surprised when it fit on her left ring finger perfectly. She smirked a little and decided to tease her container about this. "Naruto-kun, how bold of you!" She feigned shyness, and she somehow managed to show her blush through the bright red fur as she fluttered her eyelids. Naruto could only reply with a confused grunt of "huh? We've only really known each other a short amount of time. For you to propose to me so suddenly." The fox continued to intensify her blush as she shyly glanced away from Naruto. The boy cried out in shock and face faulted. What the hell? When did I even say anything like that?" he yelled as he shot up and wildly flailed both of his hands in front of him, trying to deny that statement with all his effort. Kurama finally couldn't keep it all in and let an uproarious laugh escape. The boy just stood in stunned confusion as he watched a giant fox roll around on the ground laughing with her thrashing tails carelessly leaving destructive marks everywhere all over the place. "You should be more careful, boy. If you ever give any human female an accessory that only fits her ring finger, it might imply that you want to marry that female. You'll need to make sure it goes on the right, not on the left, and you will avoid awkward situations," chuckled Kurama when her laughter finally died down after some minutes. She then transferred the ring from her left hand to her right. As she looked at the boy, she smirked upon seeing Naruto red-faced with embarrassment. "That's good to know. I'll be careful about that from now on," he mumbled quietly with a bashful expression. "All right, Naruto, time to have that talk. Have a seat somewhere comfortable since this is going to be long," she requested with all pretense of the previous joke gone. Naruto straightened up and glanced around to see a particularly nice patch of soft grass, so he walked over there to sit down on it cross-legged. Kurama just laid down in front of the blonde, her arms crossed under her raised head as she stared down her muzzle at him. She cleared her voice. "Naruto, This isn't going to be easy for you to hear, so I'm going to just say it all quickly. You need to know this now so any enemy wouldn't use this information to surprise you and distract you during important moments. Now, I know whom your parents were. I also know that old fart is keeping this hidden from you, because I saw him there when I was sealed into you by your father with the help of your mother. She began with a neutral tone, with her crimson gaze locked on the boy's blue eyes. Naruto opened them wide in surprise and confusion. What? Why would Hokage Gigi hide this? Wait a minute. You said my father sealed you into me? The only one who did that is, oh my Kami. It was him, wasn't it? The blonde boy mumbled in shock. That's right. The fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, was your father. Kurama replied evenly, her expression still blank as she continued to stare down at her suddenly overwhelmed container. It took him a long moment to process this information before he spoke up softly. So, I finally find out who my father is. I've always been desperate to know who my parents were, and it turns out my own father's the one who sealed you into me. No offense to you, but he just made me the object of an entire village's hatred and left me all alone to deal with it. Kurama just shrugged, expecting some negative reactions at the news. Sounds like a fantastic father, he muttered disgruntledly. The demon fox's eyes narrowed at her container's disrespect but allowed him to continue. Kurama, my mother. Who was she? She was my previous container before you. I was transferred from my first container, who was her distant relative, and then sealed into her for about 10 years until that night. Her name was Uzumaki Kushina. She replied with a slightly downcast expression at the memory of her previous containers. They weren't close, but they never mistreated her either. So, she was alive and there as she helped seal you into me? Naruto was hoping for a possibility that she could be out there and around. His tenant's shake of head dismissed that. She was dying. That masked bastard took advantage of your mother's greatest moment of weakness as a female container, childbirth. After your birth, he immediately attacked and snatched her away from your father. He then used the Sharingan on me to assert control and ripped me out of her. No jinchuriki is supposed to survive having their bijou forcefully extracted. It was only a matter of time for your mother. Kurama had to pause to allow her host to process this, since she knew he was doing his best to hold back the tears. She then allowed an admiring grin. It was actually amazing she had enough will and strength to live and stand up after that, if only for a little while longer. She used her last remaining strength to hold me down long enough for your father to complete his sealing ritual that bounded me to you. She finally finished and Naruto was processing everything slowly as his eyes began to shed tears. His expression was now turning into despair. Do they hate me? Is that why they sealed you in me and left me dash? Naruto's downward spiral into depression was violently interrupted as the great fox's right hand shot out and roughly pinned him to the ground with it. He cried out in discomfort as the hand pressed down a little with Kurama leaning over the only uncovered part of the boy, his head. She bared her sharp teeth with a low growl just several meters above. Naruto gulped loudly and kept very still. Listen well, Uzumaki Naruto, for I will only say this once. I have a very poor view of humans in general, so believe me when I say my praise of the few rare individuals I have known personally are not given out lightly. Your father and mother were some of the most honorable people I have come across in my long life. They were well respected, loved by many, and they were looking forward to your birth. Kurama suddenly looked annoyed as a memory came to her. All I ever felt from inside your mother since the day she found out she was pregnant with you was nothing but love and happiness. It was actually pretty sickening after a while. Despite the situation, Naruto had to sweat drop at his tenant's comment. The fox continued anyway. They wanted to be your parents and raise you, before that blasted man fucked everything up. The only reason they decided to seal me into you was because I overheard them stating they believed in you and that they hoped you and I would become partners, even friends one day to keep the village and the world safe. I can state with no doubt, and you'd better believe this, that they truly loved you and only left you alone in this harsh life because they had no choice but to believe in their son. Did you get all of that into that thick head of yours now? She quietly growled out, her expression deadly serious as she narrowed her crimson eyes at the boy pinned under her hand. After Naruto took everything in, he slowly nodded his head with somewhat happy tears flowing out now. The fox let out an annoyed sigh and removed her hand, freeing the boy. An uncomfortable silence settled between the crying boy and the giant fox as he continued to let out some raw emotions at finally finding out who his parents were. It seemed like hours before Naruto wiped at his wet cheeks and finally looked up at his tenant. Hokage Jiji never told me. Why'd he hide this from me? If everyone knew, the villagers might have treated me better, the blonde muttered with some anger in his tone for his surrogate grandfather. Kurama shrugged her shoulders. If I have to guess, he was protecting you. Recall what you read about the fourth the other day. She ordered of her new student. The fourth. Naruto paused for a moment before continuing. My father was considered the strongest Hokage since the first. He was known all over the world as the Yellow Flash due to his improvements on and use of the second's Hiraishin teleportation jutsu in combination with his own personal jutsu, the Rasengan. Dad was particularly famous for killing you and single-handedly destroying half of Awagaku's shinobi force in just a few minutes of battle in the Third Great War. Kumo didn't like him much either. He raised his eyebrows as he summarized what he learned. With all that Dad's done, his enemies would be frothing at the mouth if they ever heard he had a son, and would do anything possible to kill me to prevent another Yellow Flash. Naruto concluded as if he uncovered a very elusive clue in a crime investigation. That's most likely why the old fart hid it from you and everyone else. It wasn't just to protect you but the village as well. The old earth fossil likely would have his assassins march on to Konoha and comb over it to find you if he ever heard even a ghost of any rumor about a son having been born and is alive today. That's why you should keep quiet about your parentage for the time being. Kurama narrowed her eyes, not taking a no for an answer. Her host slowly nodded and she knew the reason for his reluctance. Trust me, boy. You may think your life might have been better off if everyone knew and treated you better, but is that really true? Think about this. Do you honestly believe you would be happy if everyone became your friend only because of your famous parents, and they just handed you everything you ever wanted on a platter? It would be very difficult for you to get recognition for your own hard work and accomplishments. She pointed out to her container. No, I can't really imagine myself enjoying that kind of life. Sure, my early years were shitty, but I've been happy to have made good friends lately, and I can't imagine changing that now. Naruto gave a sad smile to his sensei. Thanks for knocking some sense into me, Kurama. The fox just nodded her head and laid it on her crossed arms, apparently finished with her revelations. Is it alright if you told me about all you remembered about my parents? Naruto nervously asked of the fox. She just gave a shrug. Sure. We have some time. Kurama replied with a lazy smirk before continuing on to regale the boy with tales of what she had seen from inside his mother. Chapter 6, Training Montage. Point 1. In Naruto's new and improved mindscape, it was hours after Kurama told Naruto all she knew about his parents, and the young blonde was now lying on his back in the grass with a very contented smile. He finally heard actual facts about his parents, and he was only too happy to know who they were after years of nothing. They were more incredible than he could have ever imagined, and he was extremely proud to have been born from them. Kurama had taken a quick nap nearby on the soft grass while the blonde was deep in his thoughts. She just woke and now just truly realized that she had much more space and freedom compared to that dark and wet room she was trapped in for years, not to mention being strapped to a large floating rock in Kushina's seal before that. Delighted with that notion, she rolled over on her back and began rubbing her back and face against the tall grass like a cat would, her tail sweeping around lazily. Naruto, hearing the commotion, raised his head to see what his tenant was doing and had to chuckle softly. Kurama stopped to open one eye to glare at him. After a moment of staring, she just grunted dismissively and continued her rubbing. Don't worry. I'm not gonna tell anyone out there what you do in here. It's not like they'll believe me that the great Kyuubi no Kitsune enjoys frolicking around in the grass like a regular fox. He teased with a smirk, as if reading her mind this time. That goes without saying. Just remember I know everything you think and say. Kurama grunted as she lazily rolled back over on her stomach. She stretched all four limbs, opened her jaw wide to the point of almost unhinging in a massive yawn that actually shook the landscape, and had all of her large and long tails spread out into the sky like a fan behind her in an impressive showcase of her massive size. Her container had to watch in silent awe, wondering just how she was sealed into someone as small as him. Phew, that felt good to do after so long in that cramped space. I feel like clearing my throat, so I'm going to show you something that you will be able to do if I train you long enough. Get ready to duck for cover. Kurama spoke in a mischievous tone. Wait a minute, clearing throat? Why do I have to do? Oh hell! Naruto trailed off in alarm as he watched the massive fox point her muzzle up into the air, and her tails curved over her head, just above her open mouth. He felt the air around him getting heavier, and his entire body felt like it was vibrating intensely from the sheer power emitted by the large fox. He saw what looked like a large mixture of dark red and light blue blobs of chakra appear out of thin air that began converging toward the space Kurama's tails were curved around. He knew this was big trouble and dashed for cover behind a nearby large tree. "What the hell are you trying, damn fox?" he shouted over his shoulder as he dove behind the trunk. Kurama didn't pay him any mind as she concentrated. After a few long seconds of charging, a giant ball of raw and sinisterly red chakra was now floating above her head. When it stopped gathering, Naruto could see the ball begin to shrink with a loud rumble. It kept compressing and it was getting darker and denser as it shrank in size until it reached January 10th of the size it was before. He was flabbergasted when Kurama opened her mouth wide and snapped it closed around the ball before visibly swallowing. He then watched as the giant fox hunkered down on all fours, as if she was a lion ready to pounce. His eyes widened when her neck and cheeks began to visibly balloon out as if she was holding in a massive breath of air. The fox then opened her mouth slightly with smoke slowly wisping out of it, followed by a slight twitch of her body forward, and that was when all went to hell for Naruto. Kurama spat the chakra ball from her mouth with monstrous force, feeling and sounding like a giant cannon shot. The force from the expulsion immediately tore up a large portion of land in front of her. It also rattled every bone in Naruto's body, as he tried desperately to watch through the blinding flash of the chakra ball leaving the fox's mouth at incredible speed. It wasn't too hard for him to follow it as the speeding chakra ball mercilessly gorged the ground underneath it due to its incredible power and speed. The boy watched in amazement as the chakra ball continued on its destructive path unimpeded until it finally disappeared into the distant horizon toward the wide and empty expanses of the plain that he created. "Whoa, what the hell was th-? Was all Naruto got out as he was interrupted when the empty plain lit up in a blinding white flash of light from the chakra ball's explosion that engulfed a good portion of it in a quickly expanding dome of raw energy and raging flame. A massive shockwave followed, crashing through Kurama and Naruto. It nearly blew the small human away despite his cover, but the large fox was unconcerned, as if it was just some gust of wind ruffling her fur. The energy and flame dissipated as quickly as it appeared, and all that was left was sullen silence, and the sight of a huge mushroom cloud of smoke billowing high into the sky in the distance. "Oh my Kami! I can't believe this! How is this possible? That'll destroy an entire village in one hit!" Naruto murmured in wide-eyed alarm at this sight after he slowly got out from behind cover. He shot a quick look over at the towering figure of Kurama, and she seemed bored as she cracked her neck as if to work out a small crick. A cold shiver went down the boy's spine as he seemed to have finally realized for the first time since meeting her that he just saw a small portion of what the most powerful entity in the world, currently sealed inside his own body, was truly capable of. "Just how the hell did Dad manage to seal you into me? You're way too strong!" he blurted out in disbelief as he slowly walked up next to the giant fox sitting on her haunches. Kurama glanced down at the blonde boy still staring in amazement at the plume of smoke. "As much as I hate to admit this, but despite all of my power, your father only needed a combination of smarts, techniques, and timing to hold me down long enough for the sealing. I tried to destroy your village with this very technique while I was under that man's control, but the fourth used his teleportation technique to simply send it where there was no danger." Kurama admitted with some annoyance at remembering her strongest technique being deflected so easily. She sighed and continued. "Absolute and overwhelming power is not the answer to every battle. That's why, even if you could do this with training, I do not recommend using it all the time unless absolutely necessary or you know it would be to your advantage. You should only use this as a last resort, or if you're matched up against another jinchuriki." Naruto whipped his head up at her in surprise. "There are others like me? I have 8 so-called siblings, and they're all likely sealed into humans as well. I'm the strongest since I have the highest number of tails among the 9 of us. However, the others are no pushovers and should not be taken lightly," she warned as she glanced down at her small host. "I remember that your father had a conversation with my previous container about a Kumo nin he encountered in battle during the Third Great War. He spoke of that nin as having the ability to transform any part of his body into a giant octopus-like tentacle. I'm willing to bet that human is the jinchuriki for the 8-tailed beast, or hachibi. If he's able to transform like that, he likely attained a full merger with his bija like we are trying to achieve. If you encounter that Kumo nin in battle in the future, I'll likely suggest immediate retreat. Unless you have full control of my power, you will not beat him. Is that understood? Naruto gulped loudly and nodded. For the all-powerful Kyuubi to stress about retreating, this jinchuriki definitely was serious business. How long do you think it's gonna take for me to be able to use your power, Kurama? He inquired. The fox thought deeply for a moment. To be honest, I do not know. Your chakra coils need to grow and expand to be able to handle the influx of my chakra with yours. The more your coils develop, the more of my power you're able to handle without exploding. Not only that, my chakra is fueled by the residual malice of mankind. If you aren't used to it, the chakra will try to drive you berserk with its negative nature, and you may go out of control, even with your comrades nearby. She warned bluntly. She knew it would do no good to keep quiet about the negatives of trying to attain full transformation, so she might as well throw it out there now. Normally, I'd say it will take 20 years for you to develop well enough to attain the full 100% of my power. However, I have noticed lately your body has an incredible capacity for quick adaptability, probably thanks to the elite blood of the two clans you were born from. I would not be surprised if you did it in 10 years instead. Naruto nodded his understanding before something she said hit him. Wait, you said I was born from two clans, and I know about the Namikaze. It was a minor clan and it had no Kekai Genkai, but it produced powerful shinobi constantly. It just was unlucky enough to die out over the years, leaving my dad as the last one before me. Are you saying the Uzumaki clan exists? He exclaimed in surprise with a bit of hope seeping into his tone. Existed. The fox corrected, making him look up at her in confusion and some disappointment. She sighed, not wanting to show him this memory, but she figured it'd answer quite a few questions in one go. A picture was worth 1,000 words after all. She snapped her fingers, making what looked like a large holographic screen pop into existence in front of Naruto. This is the last sight your mother saw of her homeland. A picture flickered into sight on the screen, displaying a gorgeous and mountainous island as seen from a beach across the sea surrounding it. However, it was marred by plumes of smoke peppering what was apparently a beautiful and prosperous village sitting in the center of it, now empty and destroyed with most of its buildings demolished. He gasped and stared, transfixed by what he saw. He knew and felt it with every fiber of his being that this was his ancestral home, and seeing it so devastated made his heart clench painfully. The Uzumaki clan was so powerful and large that it formed its own village, Uzushiogakure, in the center of the land of whirlpools off the sea coast to the east of here. It was located between what you humans call land of water and land of waves. The village was a close ally to Konohagakure because of Uzumaki Mito, who was practically a royalty of Uzushio, marrying Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage. What happened to us? Naruto whispered as he continued to stare at the image, feeling his eyes become watery at this sight. He could only imagine the grief his mother was feeling seeing this in person. Your clan was so formidable, with its own brand of special abilities, that people spoke of the Uzumaki in the same breath as the Senju and Uchiha back then. Unfortunately, while the abilities of the Senju and Uchiha could be beaten and bypassed, the Uzumaki clan's special talent in Fuinjutsu, or the art of sealing, was deemed virtually unbeatable. One seal master specially trained by the Uzumaki could easily take on an entire platoon of jounin if he had half a minute to prepare, and that's if he was having a bad day. Naruto's eyes widened. So the others feared us. Right. Just before the Second Great Shinobi War, the villages of Iwa, Kiri, and Kumo formed a secret alliance to swiftly destroy Uzushio in one night, and they were going to march on to Konoha in a surprise invasion before any news could reach here about the destruction and the coming enemy. They were intending to wipe Konoha off the map with a quick offensive. They might have succeeded if they hadn't made a fatal miscalculation. Naruto frowned. Wait a minute. I read about that war recently, and the biggest names were Konoha, Aim, and Suna. The three you mentioned barely did anything. Kurama's teeth bared in a truly malicious grin as she chuckled sadistically. You'd be proud of your ancestors. At least 70% of each of the three villages' military formed a large invasion force at least 40,000 strong against Uzushiogakure's 4,000s. They believed that was enough to overwhelm Konoha afterward. The blonde growled at such a lopsided number. After all was said and done, Uzushio was destroyed and its few remaining members were scattered into the wind. The invasion force, hee hee ha ha ha. The fox had to stop here because she was laughing uproariously, as if enjoying such a sweet memory. Naruto's sweat dropped, not surprised his new partner apparently found large-scale destruction amusing. It took a moment for Kurama to calm down. They were cut down to only 5,000. Naruto's jaw dropped. While he was pissed that his clan was destroyed over such a stupid reason, he had to admit that was damn awesome. To make it worse for the invading villages, they never gained anything of value from Uzumaki Kage. While your kin were dying or about to be captured, they activated trap seals that destroyed their enemies in their deaths. Whatever were valuable to the clan were sealed away in impassable vaults that only those of Uzumaki descent could open. Even housewives and children about to be captured for breeding sacrificed themselves in kamikaze attacks using seals, taking their potential captors with them. The invaders greatly underestimated just how far the Uzumaki clan would go to make them pay for stepping even a single centimeter into their home. What was supposed to be one night of a quick mission became 3 days of hell the survivors would do anything to forget for the rest of their lives. Kurama finished softly, a stark difference from when she was laughing earlier. Naruto was in complete awe of how his ancestors refused to back down in face of such overwhelming odds. The remaining invading force were woefully unprepared to face the angry reinforcement group that arrived from Konoha. It was the first and only time your mother, who just became genin at the time, drew upon my power and rage, and she used it in combination with her chakra chains to slaughter hundreds. She took no prisoner and did not regret one moment of it, I'll tell you that much. Naruto nodded. He'd have done the same. Despite the destruction of Uzumaki, the incident single-handedly helped change the composition of the entire Great War. Instead of Iwa, Kiri, and Kumo marching on Konoha with little resistance, they turned tails and retreated into their countries to lick their wounds. The only reason the war even occurred was because Suna and Aim tried to invade several of the minor countries in the confusion in order to gain more resources. Konoha had to defend their interests. Despite that, it was still the shortest Great War out of the 3 so far, and Konoha came out of it with minimal loss, the legendary Sannin, and a solid alliance with Suna. Kurama exhaled, apparently done with her long lecture. She then jerked her head at the screen still showing the destroyed Uzumaki. Compared to the Uchiha, a clan of thieves and power-hungry mongrels, I actually respect the Uzumaki for its strength and wisdom that it earns through hard work. Its focus on family and comradeship was second to none as well. Because of their ultimate sacrifice, Konoha still stands today, and its shinobi force proudly display the Uzumaki spiral on their outfits to honor Uzumaki. Naruto smiled softly while he walked up to the floating screen and reached a hand out, as if he was hoping to touch his ancestral home for real. Did Mom ever go in there after? No. She was too grief-stricken. She asked the old fart to seal off its access, and no one were allowed in except for any other stray Uzumaki. Not like anyone else could sneak in anyway, since the trap seals left behind by the dying defenders made this entire island an impenetrable vault now. No one can get in or out. Then it's up to me. I need to see what's there. I need to learn more about my mother's clan and sealing. That's my duty as her son and as an Uzumaki, he declared quietly as he clenched his outstretched hand, as if grasping his clan's past. Kurama grinned. The secrets you may learn there will certainly help in our quest to eliminate that masked bastard, so I have no objection to this. We'll have to wait a while though, because the old fart likely will not allow us to go there now until we're sufficiently strong enough. Naruto put on an impatient frown, but had to nod in agreement. I'll have to somehow learn the basics of sealing around here anyway. I'll help you with some aspects of it. I didn't spend all that time in Mito and your mother without seeing some of their Fuinjutsu skills in action, but you're going to have to find a seal master to truly understand the art. Something to think about another time, he replied with a shrug. With that out of the way, it's time we figure out your taijutsu and kenjutsu styles soon. The sooner you get started on learning these styles, the faster you will rise in power when you complement these styles with jutsu and other techniques you will learn later down the road. The fox suggested as Naruto sat down into an attentive sitting position, ready to absorb all his teacher would suggest. I believe I know the perfect taijutsu style for you, and I actually developed it. It's called the Raging Fox. You will be using my power in the future, and this style is the best way to augment it in order to quickly destroy enemies in front of you. Even without the power, you will most likely overwhelm most opponents with its unpredictable nature and agility. It's also not a very rigid style, so it's easy to flow from a strike into another, which would keep your opponents from being able to easily guess your pattern. Its only major drawback is that it lacks decent defense. You'll use your reflexes to avoid most strikes, but you may take some damage if you get too aggressive and the opponent's good. Fortunately for us, my chakra will be useful in keeping you from being injured too badly. Kurama explained. Naruto's eyes began to get wider and wider as the fox explained the style's benefits and drawbacks. Sounds like a great style. And the nice thing is that no one else would know anything about this and it'll throw everyone off. Please teach me, sensei. You'll spend time here learning the stances from me, and you will need to practice them outside the mindscape since muscle memory is very important for learning martial arts, and you can't develop it in your own mind. Same goes for any kenjutsu style as well. Kurama pointed out. This still didn't put a damper on Naruto's excitement. In fact, it only made him more determined. What about the kenjutsu style? Do you have any recommendation? I don't personally care for kenjutsu, but I have seen many styles in my long life. I will show you the memories of all the top weapon users I have seen until you feel a connection with a style you can start out with, and we will develop a training regimen for that. So how will I train here? No offense, but you're super huge and I'll get squashed if I even tried to spar with you. Naruto pointed out with a sheepish chuckle. Kurama grinned toothily. When you linked your senses with mine, I gained a small degree of control over this mindscape. Just enough to form something like this, she stated as she seemed to concentrate a little. Wisps of smoke formed out of thin air and converged on a spot next to Naruto. He was quite surprised to see a human form out of the whirling smoke. This somewhat muscular human turned out to be a very plain and unassuming brown-haired man in dull gray clothing, someone one would easily lose in a crowd. The man had on a blank expression, and he did not seem to pay any notice to a giant fox behind him or the surprised little boy sitting in front of him. He had the feeling of a puppet being controlled by an invisible force. I can infuse it with my knowledge of any particular style and set this apparition upon you to train you in that style. Kurama explained as her creation suddenly moved into an odd stance of getting on all fours. Before Naruto could react, the man pounced toward the boy, hands out like claws, even the fingernails looked sharpened. He yelped in surprise and fell back onto the grass just as the apparition disappeared when it was about to land a deadly strike. Kurama chuckled lightly before wagging her index finger in the air. You're not ready yet for either style. First we have to finish your conditioning, then we will start work on developing your body specifically to use Raging Fox effectively in battle. After about 6 months of adapting your body to Raging Fox, we will begin on the kenjutsu style you pick. Just remember it has to augment your taijutsu. Raging Fox will be aggressive, wild, and unpredictable, just like how your personality is. Keep that in mind while we search my memories for the style that fits you, okay? Before we forget, you also will need to learn to mold chakra during all of this. You will be doing chakra control exercises to improve your chakra efficiency and be able to use more jutsu in one sitting. Naruto nodded, his eyes looking serious, but he was totally excited on the inside. He just knew he was going to get so strong with his partner's help. Alright, it's time for you to get out of here. You have been sitting out there in the middle of the clearing for around 3 hours now, the fox suggested. Naruto quickly nodded and gave a wave as he faded out. Kurama smirked before glancing over at the ruined landscape she caused with her attack. A sweat drop formed over her head. Maybe I should have asked that boy to restore this before he left. Oh well. 2 weeks later, back at the 42nd training ground. Please tell me you're kidding me, Kurama. Naruto pleaded of his tenant as he stood at the edge of a large and deep ravine next to the training ground. It looked truly menacing and he seriously believed was going to die if he slipped and fell from here. I'm not. Now that you're done with your conditioning, we are now training to use all the muscles you would need for Raging Fox. A major part of that style is the ability to feint and move in unpredictable patterns around an opponent. You need strong limbs able to latch on to most surfaces and bounce off in the same instant. So, in addition to your usual workouts, you will be climbing down to the bottom of this ravine and back up several times, not just facing up, but also facing left, right, and down at random intervals. You will need to get used to the effect gravity will have on your body from any direction. Now get your ass down there. Kurama ordered with a tone that didn't allow any talk back. Naruto gulped and began slowly easing himself over the edge, and promptly yelped in surprise as he slipped off with no warning. It was only by luck he managed to grab onto a thin ledge below him before he fell any farther into the 300-meter deep ravine. Are you trying to have me killed? He shouted out loud as he managed to pull himself up by just his fingers onto the ledge. I don't mind having you suffer a little, but remember you die. I die. So I wouldn't have you do this if I wasn't sure about your survivability. Please do not betray my faith in you, Kurama said coolly. Yeah, I'm getting that warm and fuzzy feeling from you, damn fox. Naruto's tone was dripping with sarcasm as he precariously climbed down to the next ledge. Oh, and to master this level, you must be able to make it to the bottom and back up in under 10 minutes each time, in whatever direction I tell you to face as you climb. We will keep this up until you can do it 10 times in a row, then we'll move on to the next level. The fox amusedly added on at the end, enjoying seeing her container's face begin to form tick marks. Damn you, fox! Was heard echoing from a lonely ravine in the middle of a forest outside Konohagakure. 1 month later, same place. Naruto was resting on his backside at the top of the ravine, panting heavily. He thought it was impossible, but he managed to climb down to the bottom and back up in under 10 minutes, in any direction he faced, more than 10 times in a row. He had just established a new personal best of 6 minutes and 20 seconds. How's that? I can do this in my sleep now. I beat your not-so-subtle attempts at killing me. Do your worst, damn fox! He yelled victoriously in his mind. His exuberant mood quickly disappeared as an odd and knowing chuckling from his tenant unnerved him. Did I say we'd be done with this? We only got you up to a passable enough level to begin practicing the kata of Raging Fox effectively. You still need a lot more work to make this style fast and deadly. You only completed the first level, boy. Kurama ominously stated with an evil smirk. Oh Kami, there's more of this. You know how many times I nearly died doing this, because you were there for every damn time. The boy pleaded with the fox, hoping for some mercy. It gets easier, maybe. She innocently added the last word as Naruto frowned in annoyance. First, we need something from that old fart. We'll move on to the next level tomorrow. We have already discussed the basics of this style, but tonight you will start learning the kata for real, both on feet and on all fours. Let's have some fun for now, though. Try jumping as high as you can into those trees. The blonde raised an eyebrow. He certainly did feel stronger and more agile, but did he really improve that much? Only one way to find out. He quickly got up and ran toward the treeline into the forest beyond. As he neared, he jumped as hard as he could, and was promptly shocked to find himself high in the air and zipping straight at a tree trunk. Instinctively, he twisted his body just in time to latch onto it lightly with all fours before instantly jumping off again toward another trunk. He repeated this several times, marveling at how easy it was to do this, before he finally grabbed onto a high tree branch and flipped under and up to land on it smoothly. Wow! Now I can easily jump around like these veteran nin! He excitedly exclaimed out loud as he jumped forward to continue doing another series of acrobatics deeper into the forest. Kurama had to admit she was enjoying her container's exhilaration over this. Now this should motivate him more. He'll still hate me tomorrow, though. She smirked, before sensing something far off in the distance to the right through this thick forest. Naruto. Mind going toward your right for a while? I sensed something in that direction. The fox requested of her tenant, who nodded. He figured it made for a nice break after the past month of nothing but climbing and exercises. He shot off in that direction, making use of his body's newfound agility to effortlessly skim across the branches high up in the trees. It wasn't long before the boy was surprised when the trees suddenly disappeared as he jumped into a wide open space and landed roughly on the ground, tumbling a few times. Whoops, gotta be prepared for that kind of thing, he murmured to himself as he quickly got up and lightly dusted off his clothes. He glanced around to see a large clearing between the forest he was in and the next one. However, this forest had an ominous feeling and the trees were much bigger, darker, and taller than the ones he had been jumping on. He couldn't see deep into the dark and foreboding forest. The sinister atmosphere was made more threatening by the presence of a tall metal chain link fence wrapping all the way around the forest as far as the boy could see from where he was standing. It had signs that called this the 44th training ground and they were barring entry due to the dangers inside. He saw some graffiti on one of the signs that read Forest of Death. That shiver going down his spine was made all the worse as he felt the fox inside him smirk mischievously. I can feel your evil smile. What the hell are you thinking? Naruto nervously asked of his merciless sensei. Nothing, just thinking we found a good place to train your battle sense and help prepare you to take lives. I can sense all kinds of wildlife inside this forest that would be out for your blood as soon as you set a foot in there. She replied almost too excitedly. So extreme rock climbing wasn't enough for you. Now you're trying to have me killed by going in there and face Kami knows what. Naruto yelled out loud in angst, his voice echoing all around him. His answer was a chorus of growls and roars emitting from inside the dark forest. Oh yeah! I'll destroy all of you, bastards! He yelled flippantly as he flipped both of his middle fingers at the forest. Kurama chuckled amusedly at the boy's antics. We won't be coming back here for a long while. I'm just filing this location away until we get you up to a good enough level to survive anything in there. She mused as the blonde turned around to head back into the forest he was in. So I'll be spending some time in there. You said something about battle senses and taking lives. Aren't they just animals? Granted, they sound incredibly vicious and violent, but they're not humans. Naruto pointed out to his tenant as he began tree-hopping back to the 42nd. You can spend all of your time training for your first encounter with a human, and you will not if will still freeze up due to inexperience. A beast out for your head is about the same as a human going after you, because in the end, it's either kill or be killed. Going in there will not only help tune up your training, it will improve your survival instincts and ease your nerves when facing humans for the first time later on. The fox reasoned, and he had to admit she was right. He wasn't going to like the idea of killing, but as long as he understood it was to protect his precious ones, he would do it. Later in the Hokage's office, the Hokage was sitting at his desk still wrangling with his worst enemy, the paperwork, when Naruto quietly entered the office. Hokage GG. I'm here to report my training so far, and the fox said to get something from you, he declared as he walked up to the Hokage's desk. The third put a hand up for patience as he finished the paper he was working on. The boy respectfully complied. After a moment, Hiruzen finally looked up at the blonde boy and smiled gently. Ah, Naruto-kun. It's hard to believe it's been already 2 months since you began training with the Kyuubi. How is that going? The old man inquired as he carefully checked Naruto's body from where he sat, impressed with the boy's physical condition. There seemed to be almost no wasted muscle anywhere. All the muscles that developed were the ones needed for the styles this boy was learning. He hated to admit it, but the Kyuubi made for a good teacher. It's going great. Despite the fox's attempts to kill me by dropping me into a ravine, I endured and I'm feeling really good. I can jump through forests like most of the veteran shinobi I see. I'm feeling really fast and strong, and I'm now starting to learn my taijutsu style. I also began to mold my chakra, but I haven't done anything with it yet. Naruto reported on his progress. The third was impressed with this young boy, who had already begun to mold chakra a year ahead of most of the children. Would you mind molding as much as possible? I'd like to see what level your reserves are at, he kindly requested of the boy. The blonde nodded and put his hands up in a ram's seal. After a moment of concentrating, the Hokage could feel a massive amount of energy radiating from this young boy. He also felt some of the ANBU guards shifting slightly uncomfortably in their hiding spots. Amazing, this is already high Chunin level. He could be high Jounin, or even Kage level, by the time he's in his teens. This is just with your chakra, correct? He tried to confirm, discreetly asking if the Kyuubi was somewhat responsible. Naruto caught the meaning as he dropped the molding. Yeah, it's all mine, he affirmed with a proud smirk. The Hokage could tell the boy was looking forward to seeing just how strong he would become in the future. I have to admit I am very impressed with this amount of chakra for your young age. However, I should warn you that it would be difficult to efficiently control your chakra at that level now. At this point, you may not be able to effectively use medical ninjutsu or genjutsu since they both require very fine chakra control. Even some low-level jutsu might be out of your reach now since they can only be used with small amounts of chakra, the Hokage said, much to the boy's annoyance at having some of his possible potential impeded by his own traits. In addition to being proficient enough in knowledge, taijutsu, and throwing, you are required to know 3 specific low-level jutsu to graduate from the academy. Henjin Kawarimi shouldn't be any trouble after some practice, but I am particularly worried about Bunshin. Know any of these jutsu? I wouldn't mind practicing them on my own time, Naruto asked inwardly. Yes. They're very simple. The old fart is right about Bunshin, though. I can already tell it will be impossible to use that jutsu for you with your insane amount of chakra. Unless you have been doing chakra control since you were born, you won't be able to succeed with your huge chakra reserves. The same goes for medical jutsu and genjutsu. They're out too. I will teach you a substitute for Bunshin, and it's infinitely more useful. We will wait on that until you begin classes, though. Right now, all you need is to work on your taijutsu, kenjutsu, and chakra control. It's so we can build very solid foundations right now before we move on. Kurama lectured. I assume the Kyuubi knows these jutsu and you were discussing them with her. The third inquired curiously as he noticed the boy's expression change slightly while remaining silent. Yep. She just told me she knows Bunshin is impossible for me. I'll have to take her word on that, her being linked to me ever since I was born and all that. Naruto replied with a shrug. That's unfortunate. There are other variations to the Bunshin technique, however. You should be able to pass with any of these. It's just a matter of figuring out which one suits you. Yeah. She said she knows a substitute, and will teach me that when the academy starts. She won't tell me any more than that, though. The old man nodded, satisfied the boy would have a solution. That's all I got to say about what I've been doing. The fox also told me to come by here and pick up something to continue my training in the ravine. The blonde added. The third raised an eyebrow. This boy already reached that level in just 1 month? He thought as he stood up from the desk and moved over to a cabinet. He opened it up and took out several odd-looking straps and a vest. This is for you, Naruto-kun. I have to say the Kyuubi knows what she's doing with you. This is an old-fashioned method, but it works. He commented as he handed the equipment to the boy, who grunted as he struggled to hoist the deceptively heavy equipment over his shoulder. What are these for? He asked quizzically as he looked over the equipment with curiosity. These, Naruto-kun, are what you will be wearing as you continue your training in the ravine. You put the vest on and the straps on your wrists and ankles, then you add chakra to the chakra weights inside these to get heavier depending on how much you add. The Hokage explained. He had to hold back an amused chuckle as he watched a look of horror start to creep on the small boy's face before he slumped his shoulders, his face downcast. Both of you are trying to kill me. Who's next? Hinata-chan? He murmured dejectedly. Later this evening at Naruto's apartment. Why did I have to say that? He cried inwardly while one of his eyes was twitching as he stared with barely restrained horror down at a bento full of mysterious substances sitting on his dining table. He swore he saw something alive twitching in the dark and murky fluid, and the smell was simply too much for his sensitive nose. He had to subtly breathe through his mouth, which wasn't much better as he could almost taste the odor anyway. He had to make some effort to move his eyes away from this dangerous box to the one person who brought it here, the familiar indigo-haired girl named Hyuga Hinata. She was sitting by his side, poking her 2 index fingers together nervously. If it's okay with you, please try it. It's my first time cooking anything, she said softly with a blush. Naruto gulped and wondered where he went wrong in becoming friends with the young Hyuga. Since they met, they have been spending at least a few hours a week playing together and hanging out, mostly with Hanabi tagging along as well too. They even sparred lightly once in a while. It was a good relationship, and he just recently introduced her to Ino, Shikamaru, and Shuji. She got along well with all of them, especially Ino. Lately she was allowed to come over to his apartment to play and talk once in a while, giving her a chance to get away from the scrutiny of her clan. Now he wondered what he did wrong to have 3 people try to kill him this day, even if only one of them was doing it willingly. Kurama snorted in mock offense at that thought. Hinata-chan, not that I don't appreciate this, but I'm wondering why your dad didn't get to be your first taster. Naruto carefully asked of his would-be murderer as he kept an alert eye on the gurgling bento box for any possible attack. Hinata allowed a surprised expression before looking thoughtful. I did actually ask father to try this first, but he said that he had eaten and felt you would appreciate it. He then suggested that I bring it over here. She explained with an expectant smile, her lavender-tinted eyes shining with innocence. Naruto inwardly sighed in annoyance at the fact that Hayashi just blatantly passed the buck on to him. Hayashi, I'm going to reiterate that you are a vicious, evil, and sadistic bastard, and I'm going to find a way to get you back for this someday, he vowed. Kurama just chuckled amusedly. You might as well tell her no. Better to hurt her feelings a little and offer suggestions of improvement than to actually die of poisoning from this, she suggested. Naruto tried to look into Hinata's innocent eyes and promptly lost his resolve to refuse this meal. I can't do it. I learned it's important for a guy to appreciate a girl's cooking, no matter how bad it is, he promised in his head before picking up a pair of chopsticks and dunked them into the foreign substance. He shivered in revulsion when the chopsticks encountered resistance going in, as if it was actually more of a slimy substance than liquid. He pulled a piece of something out of the bento with a horrible slurping sound as it had to be literally tugged out of the brown slime's rather strong grip. You're seriously not going to do this, are you? Don't believe the crappy mangas you read in the library about having to eat a female's cooking no matter what. There's no guarantee I could keep you alive with this one. Kurama raised her voice in alarm, actually afraid for her container's well-being. She didn't get a chance to say any more when Naruto chomped down on whatever it was on the chopsticks. The effects were immediate. With a loud gurgle, his eyes rolled up into his head as he fell backward in his chair, crashing onto the floor like a rag doll. He went into a brief seizure before becoming very still, his eyes still completely white with froth coming out of his open mouth. Hinata, having watched all of this up close, sat in silence for a moment before she finally realized what just happened. Naruto Kiyuen / Naruto! Both females cried at the same time as Hinata rushed to his side. Elsewhere in a certain Hyuga residence, Hayashi's stomach growled as he read some reports at his desk. He had elected to skip dinner for the sake of his own safety. As soon as he saw the result of his daughter's cooking, he immediately went into full retreat and, with his best possible Hyuga composure, lied through his damn teeth that he wasn't hungry and suggested a poor victim in Naruto. He felt his nose twitching a little. Uzumaki-san must be thinking about how to get back at me. He mused inwardly and smirked a little. 5 months later at the 42 ND, after spending a week in the hospital thanks to Hinata's unique cooking, Naruto had to waste another week getting his body back into peak condition before he could wear the training weights. At first, he began with 40 pounds. It took him 2 months to get used to the extra weight. He finally was able to complete 10 round trips in a row to the bottom of the ravine and back up, under the usual 10 minutes limit each time. After that, Kurama ordered him to put 20 more pounds on until he got used to the weight, and then repeat. The last 3 months were spent getting him up to the total weight of 100 pounds. Meanwhile, he worked on the Raging Fox kata extensively. He quickly became proficient with the style, which truly impressed Kurama, who kept piling on harsher training with even more apparitions in Naruto's mindscape. The boy did not falter or complain once. It was also discovered over the months of training that he could learn jutsu and train his chakra control in his mindscape as well as on the outside. Muscles didn't limit chakra and its control, so any knowledge Naruto gained in his mind added up to the real-world applications. Kurama and Naruto quickly made use of that fortunate development, with him already learning the leaf-holding exercise, tree walking, and was now mastering water walking in his spare time. He also began working on kawarimi and henge. At this rate, he would be able to use them without seals before his academy years ended. Kurama and Naruto were also pleasantly surprised to discover that, thanks to the fox's unique chakra, the boy was able to form a solid henge compared to the usual illusion usually cast instead. Only anyone with the Byakugan or Sharingan could see through it due to the blonde's chakra signature, and only the most experienced shinobi would be able to find the few missing details on the henge form, if there were anything off in the first place. Naruto was excited about the notion of being a super spy able to go behind the enemy line at will. The fox was more pleased about the possible pranks and bloodbaths her container could induce in the future. However, she made an unusual request of Naruto. Back to that conversation. What? You want me to keep this quiet from Hokage-Gigi? The blonde boy blurted out loud as he almost tripped on a tree branch. He had to recover quickly before continuing jumping through the trees toward their usual training ground. They had just finished a successful test run with the solid henge. Naruto used it to transform himself as a plain 20-something man and walked everywhere in the village, especially in full view of as many shinobi as he could find. He even lost his 2 ANBU guards following him at the very beginning. Only 2 Hyugas seemed to notice him when they happened to have their Byakugan activated both times. Naruto was frustrated to discover that, with a simple henge, everyone greeted and acknowledged him warmly wherever he went. The difference in treatment toward the blonde pariah and a regular everyday man was extremely jarring. Pushing that out of his mind, he was planning on telling the Hokage of this discovery when Kurama redirected him toward the training ground and made the request. I know what you're going to say and I understand the great potential this has as a spying tool. However, just think about this for a minute and you will see that this is detrimental to your own personal goals. And mine as well. The fox alluded to something that she knew Naruto wouldn't agree with. Okay, so let's focus on the obvious benefits. I can go pretty much anywhere I want without enemies noticing if I'm careful. The higher-ups would love the potential for this in spying. It has limited uses in fights and on the battlefield though. Naruto had to admit he couldn't think much use for the henge in a fight. If he could spy like this all the time, even his surrogate grandfather would have no choice but to send him out on long-term spying missions to make full use of this once-in-a-lifetime potential. Realization hit him quickly. I see you caught on, boy. I believe when the old fart reports your modified henge to the council as part of his job, they will most likely debate having you sent out on long missions. I wouldn't be surprised if they train you now and ship you out within the year. You will only be here in the village a handful of times for the rest of your shinobi career and would be unable to protect your friends if there were trouble. Plus, you will not be able to train as much under henge, and reaching your full potential will be much harder, maybe even impossible. Kurama broke down the cons for her container, who frowned. On one hand, he wanted to help his village as much as he could, but on the other, his personal goals of being a powerful frontline shinobi conflicted with that. In the end, it was an easy decision for him as he reached the ground. He would keep the modified henge to himself, and use it only when he needed to. Present Naruto was seen hoisting himself over the edge of the ravine onto solid ground easily, as if the extra 100 pounds he was wearing weighed nothing. He let out a tired sigh as he wiped sweat and dirt from his forehead. That was the 10th time in a row, Kurama. I don't know how, but I also beat my best time even when I'm wearing all of this. He had to admit it almost scared him how much he grew so fast. His body did not look like a normal child's now. He grew a little taller, putting him at the same height as Shikamaru, currently the tallest of his friends. Lean and powerful muscles could be seen everywhere on his body, yet he still looked agile and slim. Good job, Naruto. We'll keep the weight the same for a while until you grow some more. For now, just do this twice as a daily routine. Better to just let your body gradually grow used to this level instead of constantly stressing it with more weight. As I said before, your ultimate goal is to be able to move with 3 times your fully grown body's weight on you as if it was nothing. You would be very dangerous without the weight on, and even more deadly when you start drawing on my chakra. Kurama stated matter-of-factly before continuing. Take the weights off and go down the ravine and back up as fast as you can. See if you can't do this in under a minute. Naruto's eye twitched at his tenant's challenge. He quickly stripped the weights off and stretched to get a feel for his new and improved body. He did not get to make use of his body's full strength in any meaningful way. He also had to practice the katas that he learned in the mindscape with the weights on, and Kurama ordered him to not use full strength if he could help it the rest of the time. For one Uzumaki Naruto, this would be the first time he got to truly use his body in months. In the forest leading to the 42nd training ground, a small indigo-haired girl with pale eyes could be seen pushing through some bushes in the dense forest. Hyuga Hinata was slowly making her way toward the clearing where her friend Naruto was training, and she was carrying an oversized bento. She knew her friend was out there training again, and that he wouldn't have any lunch with him as usual. After that unfortunate incident with her first bento 5 months ago, she felt so responsible and guilty even with Naruto's reassurances. She then strove to improve her cooking as quickly as possible, and soon afterward, she was able to make decent meals. Hanabi now made requests for their lunches together, and she enjoyed anything her older sister cooked so far. Even their stoic father seemed to be visibly looking forward to whatever meal Hinata made these days now. When she found out from Naruto that he was training out here, she decided to make a bento lunch for him once or twice every week. The first time she showed up in front of Naruto with the lunch, she was stunned when he immediately took the box and dug in. Even though she knew she improved, she thought Naruto would be wary of her cooking after the last time, but he just ate it all without any hesitation. It was at that moment she became very happy, and was nearly fainting from overjoy when he yelled "It's so good" to the entire world in the clearing. Even now, her heart still raced whenever he smiled brightly at the sight of her approaching with lunch for him. Shaking out of her thoughts, she saw she was getting close to the clearing, and decided to use her Byakugan to check if it was okay for her to get closer. After searching a little, she noticed Naruto standing at the edge of the ravine with her zoomed-in vision. She smiled as she watched him begin to strip off the weights he was wearing and stretched. She figured he was finished with that dangerous exercise. She always was apprehensive when she watched him training, thinking this could hurt, or even kill him at any moment. She frowned when she watched Naruto walk back up to the very edge of the ravine. Her eyes then widened in surprise as she gasped when Naruto suddenly jumped up into the air and seemed to be diving into the ravine. Her body broke into a run before she even realized it, and she was panting in panic as she burst onto the clearing, making a beeline for where Naruto jumped off. Somehow she held on to the bento she was holding through all of this. As she was about to reach the ravine, she yelped in shock and fell back onto her backside when a yellow blur jumped up high into the air from the ravine. She craned her neck to see what it was and almost broke into tears of relief when she saw it was Naruto, as he did an acrobatic flip in the air before landing gently on the ground facing away from her. "Wow! I got to the bottom and back up here in less than a minute! That's amazing!" He yelled loudly to no one in particular, not noticing that Hinata was still on her backside behind him staring at the jubilant blonde in shock. It was a few more long seconds before he finally smelled lavender in the air and knew that scent to be Hinata's shampoo. He stopped celebrating and took a glance around to finally notice his friend sitting on the ground behind him in dumbfounded shock, her wide eyes and light pink lips trembling. It took him a moment to understand exactly what could have happened. He assumed he probably scared her badly and hoped to play it off as he sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Sorry? He tried before a crying brunette tackled him to the ground hard. Don't do that! That scared me to death! She tried to angrily say, but she was just too relieved to see her friend all right. She let herself cry for a moment on Naruto's chest as he guiltily patted her on her back. She finally sat up, straddling his torso as he laid flat on the ground. What dangerous thing were you doing just now? She almost growled with a frown as she looked down at the still sheepish Naruto. Hinata's usual stutter had all but disappeared in the time she spent with Naruto and her new friends. Now she would only stutter when she was extremely nervous. To say her father was slightly ecstatic about Naruto's effects on Hinata would be to say Senju Tsunade had a slight gambling problem. Even if he didn't show it. I was finally allowed to take the weights off. I decided to give what I could do at full power a try. I climbed down to the bottom and back up in under 1 minute. I can't believe how fast I did that, Naruto exclaimed with an excited smile. Hinata had to smile at his attitude about all of this. She wondered just how much stronger he was going to be even just 10 years from now on. One half of her liked, even found it very attractive, that he could be very powerful. The other half just dreaded it, since it would mean he'd likely attract attention from enemies. She feared for his safety in the future. Hinata-chan. Naruto's gentle voice broke the brunette out of her thoughts. Sorry, but if you don't mind, can you get off? I can't move, he tried to ask delicately. It took the Hyuga heiress a second to realize she was still straddling her friend, and jumped off with a blush. Sorry about that. I forgot. She mumbled in embarrassment, her stutter coming back briefly. Naruto simply diffused any awkwardness when he got up and made a beeline for the bento sitting on the ground nearby. He then earnestly began eating his lunch, and Hinata joined in with a happy smile a moment later. As she was eating her half of the lunch, she noticed that her friend seemed to be staring at her somewhat. She began to blush and wondered what he was thinking. Naruto-kun, is there a reason why you are staring at me? She timidly asked as she stared down at her bento, too shy to meet Naruto's steady gaze. She heard him chuckle slightly and knew he was doing his usual sheepish gesture. Sorry about that, Hinata-chan. I've seen all the other female Hyugas and you're the only one with short hair. I was just thinking how you'd look with long hair, and I think it's easy to imagine you like that. You'd look great, I'm sure, Naruto honestly said as he went back to eating his portion of the lunch. Hinata's blush intensified as she wondered if he preferred long-haired girls. Truth be told, she thought about growing her hair out some, and she now felt more reassured that Naruto could imagine her with a style like that. A few more minutes of silence followed before Hinata finally decided to try to satisfy her curiosity. Ano, I was just wondering who your sensei is. I have never seen anyone else other than just you working out here alone. This person must be amazing to make you so much stronger than before in just 6 months. She asked with some nervousness, afraid she might be prying. Naruto looked up from his lunch and allowed an embarrassed smile at her compliment. Sorry, it's kind of a secret. There's a reason for that, and a kid like me actually isn't even supposed to be here. It was only because of Hokage Gigi and my special circumstances that I was given permission to train. He apologetically said and felt very guilty at seeing Hinata's expression change to one of sadness. It felt like kicking a small puppy to him. I see. She dejectedly muttered as she looked down at her lunch with a downcast expression, her curiosity once again prolonged. Hinata-chan, it's not that I don't trust you, but Hokage Gigi asked me to make sure information about me didn't come easily to anyone, even my friends. It's S-ranked after all. You'll find out everything about me in time, I'm sure. Just be patient, and you'll get all your answers. Naruto sincerely assured with a sad smile. Hinata felt a little better and nodded slightly. After a long moment of silence, she spoke up. Ano, father was saying he would like to see you and see how you're doing. Hanabi-chan has been asking the same, too. It's been a few weeks since you came by our place, so how about I make dinner and you come over tonight? She offered. Naruto allowed his usual bright smile and nodded. Is there anything specific you'd like? She inquired, wanting to make whatever Naruto was in the mood for. The blonde had to take a moment and think, before inspiration struck him. He barely managed to hide his mischievous smile as he made his request. Hinata brightened up at the fact she would have an easy time making this dish and make it as delicious as she could, but she'd make sure. Are you sure, Naruto-kun? I could do something more complicated. That's what I'm in the mood for, Hinata-chan. I'm sure your family would absolutely love this too. Naruto assured, his lips almost twitching at what he was planning. The rest of the lunch was spent in comfortable silence before Hinata excused herself since she had to go back for her own training. Naruto sent her off with a wave and a smile, now standing alone in the clearing. You know as well I do she wouldn't care about the great and terrible Kyuubi being sealed into you. In fact, it would answer most, if not all, of the questions she must have had since meeting you, and it'd help her understand why you're hated. I dare say she would stand even more firmly at your side to help you deal with the ignorant fools that wish for your death. Kurama suddenly spoke up, offering her view on this. That last part is exactly why I'm not feeling great about telling her. That'd mean she'll have to deal with hatred of her own for being closely associated with the demon brat. She's already dealing with her clan, and she doesn't need the whole village after her too. I can't stand that kind of thought. It probably didn't help that I've been pranking the entire village all this time too, making my reputation worse. Kurama just shrugged, deciding she'd just leave this up to the boy's discretion. Later tonight at the Hyuga main house, Hayashi's left eye twitched as he had on a very stony expression, trying not to betray his displeasure at this development to those around him. In front of him on the dining table sat a plate. It was a very simple entree, and he was sure that Hinata cooked this very well with her developing but already excellent cooking skills. Everyone else at the table would eat this and call it great tasting, all except for him. Hayashi's eye twitched again as he stared down at the abomination on the plate with barely restrained contempt. The entree combined two things he disliked the most, cheese and eggs, into one to make a large and cheesy omelette with rice on the side. Naruto's eyes caught Hayashi's slight contempt for his dinner and had to hold back a smile, victorious that the information he painstakingly sweet-talked out of Tomo were correct. He'd enjoy watching this. Hinata had just finished setting the plates down for Naruto, and Hanabi sitting to Hayashi's left at the large table before she sat down between her father and Naruto. The blonde was chatting quietly with Hanabi about what she had began to learn in her recent lessons with the gentle fist. Hayashi hated having to do this, but he would pretend that he forgot he ate earlier and was still feeling full. He hoped to get out of eating this abomination. Unfortunately for the Hyuga clan head, Naruto seemed to have excellent timing. Oh, Hinata-chan, this looks so good! I can tell your dad's going to love this, and I bet he's really hungry too. I haven't seen him eat anything since I got here long ago. Naruto exclaimed innocently to Hinata's reddening face, though Hayashi swore he saw a ghost of a mischievous smirk on the boy's lips. His eye twitched again at the boy's rather convenient statement. He wondered if the boy planned this. It shouldn't have been possible though, since very few knew of his immense dislike for eggs and cheese. Any thought of getting out of this disappeared when Hinata's expression slowly lit up with innocent expectation as she stared at her father. He almost sighed in defeat as he gently clapped his hands together and announced itadakimasu to officially begin the dinner. The sisters and Naruto immediately dug in, and Hayashi was stalling for time as he slowly picked the chopsticks up. While Naruto ate, he was discreetly keeping an eye on Hayashi's face for his expressions. Hayashi caught this and realization came to him as he frowned slightly at the boy who gave a barely visible grin. You little bastard. You took your time getting back at me for the incident with Hinata's first bento. He had to admit he wasn't expecting this, and almost allowed a smirk at the boy's deviousness. He was caught in this with Hinata's expectant eyes boring into him for his approval and Naruto ready to cut any escape route off with his timely innocent comments. I'll have to graciously accept defeat. Hayashi determined as he slowly began to take his bites, making sure to nod his approval to Hinata. He was able to feel himself turn green underneath his stony demeanor, and barely held his gag reflex back. It was a long and tortuous 15 minutes, made worse by Naruto's hidden smirk that only Hayashi saw. When it was done, the clan head sat very still, afraid to move lest he might do something unsightly in front of his daughters. It will not do to have them see their father in a less than stellar light. Hinata and Hanabi were beginning to get concerned about their father's non-response to anything when Naruto decided to spare his host any further discomfort. How about we play a couple games in one of your rooms? He suggested. Hayashi was relieved at the prankster's surprising kindness as the girls nodded. The kids then all got up to head into another room. As soon as they left, Hayashi quickly stood and briskly walked to the nearest bathroom, almost knocking over a hallway table on the way. Later outside the compound, that was hilarious watching Hayashi as he sat through the entire dinner trying to keep his composure. I almost lost it when his skin took on a slightly green hue. Naruto giggled as he walked down the usual path toward his apartment. I like pranks as much as you do, and that was good planning, but please do be careful not to piss the clan head off too much, Kurama said with a slightly exasperated smirk. I know, no worries there. Putting that aside, come into the mindscape tonight. After we finish practicing the kata, it's time we discuss the kenjutsu style you want to learn. You'll practice that along with your taijutsu. Eventually we'll have to ask the old fart for some practice weapons, depending on what you want to learn. Naruto grinned wide in excitement as he continued walking into the darkness of night as he imagined himself with different random weapons, wondering which would be the best fit for him. Chapter 7, Training Montage Point 2. Inside Naruto's mindscape, Naruto was sprinting through a large and dense forest, doing something akin to parkour, as Kurama called it, from her lifetime of memories across massive roots and fallen trunks in his path. To an uninformed bystander, it might seem like he was running from danger. Instead, he was training. His sensitive hearing picked up some faint pattering of feet and hands on the ground behind him to the right. He spared a glance behind to find two plain-looking boys his age and size running on all fours like foxes before one of them broke off and moved across to behind Naruto's left. He frowned in frustration at allowing himself to be flanked, while his enemies were preparing to strike at his back simultaneously. With a split-second decision, he abruptly stopped dead in his track in the middle of the forest and prepared himself. The two boys were momentarily surprised enough that they nearly overshot him before recovering and turning on a dime to dash at him from both sides. One raised a knife hand with sharpened fingernails aimed at the boy's neck, while the other went for the blonde's legs with a sliding leg sweep. The boy smirked for an instant before hopping and twisting his body into spinning horizontally in midair between the stabbing hand and leg sweep, which both missed barely. As he spun, Naruto quickly whipped an arm out downward with all his might, connecting with the stabbing apparition's head to hammer it to the ground hard. The impact snapped its neck instantaneously. At the same time, he swung a leg out to the sweeping apparition, his foot almost punching a hole through its face as it was kicked back. It crashed against a tree trunk hard enough to crack the bark around it. Before it could get up, its neck was brutally smashed against the tree by a lunging elbow from Naruto. Blood and spittle spewed from its mouth as it slumped down again and stayed still. The blonde let out a small sigh of relief. "Give me a break, Kurama. I've been at this for 4 hours with those two." He grumbled out loud to no one in particular. "This will be the last round. Do well, Naruto." The demon fox's disembodied voice rolled through the forest like thunder. The two apparitions that Kurama set upon him remained still for a moment before they twitched and began to rise from their positions like zombies, their previous wounds gone. Naruto cursed before regaining his bearing and ran on all fours as fast as he could toward where he knew the forest would end. After a few minutes of running and hearing the two apparitions behind him, he suddenly broke out from the trees onto a large plain, which was covered as far as eyes could see with tall grass swaying under a gentle breeze. He caught a glimpse of the giant crimson fox Kurama in the distance, lying lazily on her side with her head propped up by an arm. Her red eyes were slowly following her host's movement. Naruto then heard rustling of the tall grass behind him, and knew the two apparitions were gaining on him. He abruptly tumbled forward into a series of cartwheels and backward somersaults before finishing by landing on all fours facing the opposite direction he was running. His body was coiled and ready for action as his eyes stared directly into the apparition's soulless eyes while they stopped at the boy's challenging pose, wary of what he was planning. He didn't want to give them any time to strategize, so he quickly dashed forward on all fours, making them tense. He let out a feral roar as he hopped just above them with both of his clawed hands slashing out in huge arcs. This forced the two boys to split up, making him smirk as his plan to divide and conquer succeeded with no issue. While the apparitions lost sight of him due to having to dodge, he landed and leapt high into the air toward one of them just before it quickly oriented itself. Having lost sight of its target, it prepared for any attack from any direction, but wasn't ready for an open hand smashing into his face from above. It felt like its head was spiked straight into the ground like a ball, with a growl of exertion from Naruto, momentarily dazing it. The blonde tried to finish the boy off with a foot stomp to drive its head deeper into the soil, but had to lean back far to avoid a clawed swipe from the side from its partner. Allowing himself to backflip once to make room, he was ready for this apparition's flurry of swipes that he slipped by. Seeing an opening, he quickly grabbed an arm and pulled his enemy close to deliver a punishing spin kick to the head that knocked it to the side and sent it tumbling away. After Naruto took a quick second to catch his breath, he had to tilt his head to the side to let a knife hand slip by on his left from behind before grabbing the overextended arm and effortlessly broke it over his shoulder. The first boy ignored the loss of his left arm and tried to drive his right knee into his undefended liver from behind. The blonde was ready and spun under the broken arm still in his grip out of the knee's range, making the apparition stumble forward due to the suddenly bad footing. As a result, he easily ended up standing behind it with his right arm wrapped tightly around its neck. A quick squeeze and yank resulted in a broken neck, and the boy fell lifelessly to the ground when he let go. He didn't spare any time when he sprinted toward the remaining boy still laid out on the ground from his kick earlier and leapt high into the air. A knee crashing down on its sternum ended its life. Naruto, knowing he won, stood up slowly and allowed himself to take a breath. He had to shudder when he observed the defeated apparition's dull eyes staring up into the sky. There was no indication that it knew it was going to die. It was like seeing a puppet with its string cut. He never cared for fighting apparitions since they made his wins feel hollow, but knew this was the best way to train for the time being. Good job, Naruto. That's enough for now. Come over here and we will figure out a kenjutsu style for you, Kurama called out from her lazy posture. The boy sighed tiredly and walked away from the two apparitions now vanishing into thin air. Sit down and rest. I'm going to show you my memories of the styles I have seen while observing the world for thousands of years. It may take hours, even days, but there is no need to rush. Keep in mind that you must be sure that the style would fit you. Just pick out the styles that reach out to you and we'll make a list. Then we'll discuss them at the end. The Great Fox spoke as he sat down cross-legged and made himself comfortable. He gave an understanding nod just as Kurama snapped her fingers. A holographic projection appeared in midair in front of Naruto, who could see a swordsman showing off some techniques with his katana. It looked pretty plain and basic, something he knew someone with a superior style could easily pick up. He gave a shrug, indicating his disinterest. Kurama snapped her fingers again to change styles in the display. This would repeat for hours until they had to stop to allow Naruto to physically and mentally recover for the rest of that night in a deep sleep. 5 days later, thanks to the speeding up of time in his mindscape relative to the real world, Naruto was able to train an extra 8 hours in just 2 hours of real-world time before he had to truly sleep the rest of the night. Any more than this, he wound up being too sluggish the next day. Since they began looking for the most compatible kenjutsu style 5 days ago, the cycle of a full day of physical training and then 4 hours of mindscape training at night followed by the remaining 4 hours used for skimming through Kurama's memories continued until now. You seem to be finally running out of styles to show me. I can't believe how much you've seen, Naruto remarked as he continued to look over the styles cycling through on the projection. He was sitting comfortably on the grass while Kurama was lying next to him in her lazy posture, looking bored. You can be so picky. Out of thousands I've shown you, you picked out just 4 and I'm still not quite sure they're a good match for you, she grumbled as she snapped her fingers once more, switching to another style. I can't believe some of these styles, like that green-haired swordsman using 3 swords or that moody sissy-looking guy with the gun blade as you called it, the blonde pointed out, clearly not interested in the latest style showing on the screen, while his tenant just shrugged lazily as she snapped her fingers again. Finally, the next style caught his attention. Wait. Stop. Please show me more of this, Kurama, he requested, seemingly fascinated with the tall and muscular man with an eye patch and a very impressive mustache displayed on the projection. The man was cutting through his enemies brutally and effortlessly with 2 thin swords. Kurama smirked as she had a feeling the boy would have been interested in this one, hence why she put off showing this style until near the end after he had seen nearly everything else. She waved a hand and the projection disappeared to be replaced by an apparition identical to the man previously in the display. 10 more apparitions then surrounded him with different weapons, and they attacked him all at once. Naruto had to stare in awe as the man effortlessly evaded, sliced, and stabbed all 10 apparitions in less than a minute. The man then straightened up, his swords hanging somewhat limply, but still ready, at his sides as he glared at the boy with pure intimidation. It felt to Naruto like he'd be sliced into little pieces in an instant, and had to hold back a gulp. The man's expression abruptly turned blank, losing the intimidation in the process, and he then began demonstrating some stances and moves for Naruto to watch. I can tell you like this style, and I'm honestly not surprised. It is a very aggressive and fluid style. Like Raging Fox, this style does not have any decent defense since the sabers cannot stand up to repeated heavy strikes. It will require quick reflexes to parry, avoid, or counter any strike aimed at you. With enough practice, you should be able to effortlessly deflect any projectile, and you have 3 ways of using these sabers. You can slice through most things, stab with precision at a weak point, or throw them as projectiles to catch enemies by surprise. Kurama explained. Seems like a style that would cause a lot of bloodshed. You would be able to kill anything that moves with this, but you also have a choice to disable anyone with a careful slice at a tendon or a stab through one of the joints. It can get bloody, but it will be as efficient as you want. Kurama watched the boy think deeply as he watched the man continue its demonstration for a few long minutes. Well, this is the only style so far that really caught my attention, and I feel some sort of connection with this. I honestly don't think it's worth the time discussing the other styles I picked out earlier, and I might as well get started on learning this one. The swords, you called them sabers? They are rather unique in the elemental nations. Unlike the basic ninjato or katana, a saber is straight, usually longer, thinner, and somewhat fragile. However, the blade can either be single or double-edged depending on how it's made. It is light, which makes it easy to slice through most things if you use enough strength. It has an effective handguard on the hilt for protecting your fingers, and you can also use it as an improvised brass knuckle for enemies up close. Due to the weapon's rarity on this continent, you may have to get them made, or hope the old fart knew where they could be found. Make sure they are battle-ready when you do find some, as there may be ceremonial ones and they're utter crap. Naruto let out a weary sigh. I wonder why I ended up liking a weapon in which its rarity may be a disadvantage on this continent. Because it'd be boring otherwise, I guess. Don't worry. There will be a place or two that at least carries some decent sabers. You just have to find them. Kurama replied with a shrug. Alright. I just hope these long swords won't come back to bite me in the ass if I get stuck fighting in any narrow corridor. You'll still have your kunai for that. Even with that, while this style will focus primarily on these swords, it will also allow you to quickly disarm your enemies and make use of their weapons to suit any environment that may prove to be disadvantageous for the sabers. Seems like the pros will outweigh the cons on this one. I'm done looking. I like this style and I'll learn it to the best of my ability. Kurama allowed a toothy grin as the demonstrating apparition vanished. Very well, Naruto. This style will cause a lot of bloodbaths. I can see my bloodlust being satiated in the future. She spoke with a somewhat sinister tone. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Sometimes I forget you're a bloodthirsty one, Kurama. He sighed with a smirk before turning serious. I'm not going to commit murder for the sake of it. I will steel myself for killing if it's to protect, but I will give them a chance to back off if the situation allows for it. Kurama let out a lazy shrug. That's fine. I don't care for my container turning into a mindless killing machine anyway. Just remember one thing. Naruto looked up at the giant fox. Your father single-handedly killed hundreds of IWA Nins in Third Great War for the sake of protecting Konoha, which cheered this esteemed achievement. On the other hand, people in IWA bitterly revile your father to this day for being a monster, murdering their friends, parents, and spouses. It is all about perspectives. Keep that in mind when you face your enemies. Naruto's eyes widened. He hadn't thought much about the view from Iwa's side. Even though Iwagakure ignited the Third Great War, it was hard to justify that massacre. He knew from Kurama's stories that his father did not even show mercy to fleeing Nin. Every enemy within his sight died, no matter what they did. Naruto allowed a small shudder as he wondered if he was going to have to do something similar in the future for the sake of protecting his precious people. Now that we're done with the search, we'll get started on learning how to properly maintain swords and some basic exercises to strengthen your arms and hand grips while holding the swords. That's before we move on to the beginning kata for this style. Meanwhile, we'll see if we can at least get some practice bakens from the old fart or elsewhere. By the time you graduate, you need to buy your own set of sabers that you're comfortable with. That's a long way off, but they will be expensive because of their rarity. Better to see if you can put aside some money each month from your monthly allowances for that starting now. Naruto let out a groan. Even with the stores forced to sell anything to him at regular prices, he wouldn't have much left over for savings. Would he even be able to buy anything decent? With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get you rested up. We'll get started on your weapon training tomorrow. Last thing. I wonder what we should call this style. The name was never given by this master. Kurama put a finger up to her muzzle in thought, as she seemed to absent-mindedly swing some of her tails around behind her. Naruto watched the tails flicker around while thinking. He knew his tenants' tails were extremely deadly. They could destroy mountains, uproot entire sections of forests, and generate tsunamis. She could also practically slash anything into pieces with them, more like the style he was shown a few minutes ago. He raised his eyebrows as an idea struck him. How about thrashing tails? It keeps in theme with the raging fox and everything else you're teaching me, the blonde exclaimed excitedly. Kurama widened her eyes before grinning truthfully. That's a good name. I don't think I'll be able to come up with anything better. Thrashing tails it is then, Naruto. Later at Naruto's apartment, Naruto was feeling despondent as he watched the sunlight begin to fade from his bedroom's window in the waning hours of this day. He was lying on his bed that he hadn't left all day since he woke up, even with his stomach rumbling for food. He'd be happy 364 days out of the year if he could help it, but not on this day. It was October 10th, the day of the Kyuubi disaster exactly 9 years ago, and also his birthday. It was also the day each year the village threw a festival for the Kyuubi's death, and the hatred rose exponentially for the blonde jinchuriki for one night as the villagers bitterly remembered how much were lost on that fateful night. He couldn't go out without causing riots, so he decided to lock himself in on this day every year. Kurama gave him the day off from training because she knew his mind wouldn't be in the right frame for anything. She felt somewhat responsible for him hating this day, but there was nothing she could do or say to improve her container's mood. Naruto was going to be content with wasting away for the rest of the night, at least until he jolted into a sitting position upon hearing knocking at the front door. Timid and polite, he knew that kind of knock to be done by only one person. He let out a sigh, as he couldn't pretend to not be home since it'd be impossible to hide from that person. He stood up from his bed, wearing just a t-shirt and shorts, and walked to the door to slowly open it. It revealed Hinata standing with 4 other people he wasn't expecting. A cute platinum blonde girl was standing in front of the others waving with a mischievous smile. Naruto! Witness my new technique! Hijitsu, happy birthday hug! Yamanaka Ino exclaimed playfully as she pounced on the surprised blonde for an enveloping hug, causing them to stumble to the floor. He inwardly blushed at such close contact with this girl on whom he was beginning to realize he had a small crush. Oniai-chan! I know the same technique too! Mine's much more powerful, obviously! A cute little Hyuga girl with long black hair piped up and then joined Ino by hopping on him and hugging his other side. Hanabi-chan! Naruto exclaimed with half surprise and half happiness seeing Hinata's younger sister here as well. Troublesome, don't hurt our birthday boy, girls. I need him for our celebratory shogi match. Shikamaru warned with a smirk. Hurry up and let us in so we can get started on the birthday cake Hinata-san baked for you. Choji insisted good-naturedly as he munched on his bag of chips. Hinata blushed upon having all attention on her now. Sorry for coming by unannounced, but we wanted to celebrate your birthday. She spoke shyly with a gentle smile as she held up a large box, presumably holding the cake she baked. It was her who convinced us come by. We're sorry for not doing this earlier, but we thought since you hated this day that you'd want to be left alone. We know now that's not what you need. Ino explained, making Hinata stammer for having her part in this revealed. You're a troublesome one, but I speak for all of us that we're glad to have you as our friend. To show that, we must celebrate your day of birth that allowed you to be alive with us, Shikamaru added before glancing away with some embarrassment when everyone stared at him for saying such profound words. Naruto was stunned. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't be upset with this intrusion on his self-imposed private day to wallow in self-pity. In fact, he was truly happy to know that people were truly thankful for his existence, and this was the first time anyone wanted to celebrate his birthday other than his surrogate grandfather. He allowed a true smile as he got up to his feet, then hugged Ino and Hanabi back tightly in thanks, making them giggle happily. Thank you for doing this, Hinata-chan, he said gratefully to his indigo-haired friend, who was smiling happily. He then turned to the others. Thank you as well, everyone. Come on in. Soon at the Shinobi Academy. So we're finally about to take the first step to becoming shinobi, Naruto announced out loud as he stood in front of the Shinobi Academy building. Hinata was standing next to him in her dark blue baggy pants, a black sleeveless spandex top covered by her fur-lined pink overcoat that went down to her thighs and was zipped up. Her indigo hair was showing signs of growing beyond her familiar short hairstyle, with it barely covering the back of her neck now. Yes, she asserted with a cute, determined expression while adorably clenching her fists. She was happy to be around Naruto nearly every day in the class. But there was an issue already, at least in her opinion. I know, Naruto-kun, is there a reason you're wearing that? She pointed out to Naruto's odd outfit. It looked like a full workman's jumpsuit 2 sizes too large for him, with very durable fabric and lots of useful pockets. She didn't have a problem with that. She was more perturbed by the color. Blindingly bright Kill Me Now neon orange accented with blue from top to bottom threatened to burn out her precious Byakugan if she was too close. Naruto smiled sheepishly. This? Don't worry, Hinata-chan. I wouldn't be caught dead in this if I had a choice. I was shopping for an outfit when my sensei and I came across this in the bargains bin. I joked that I'd improve my stealth if I wore this doing pranks and got away scot-free. She got that idea and is making me wear this until I graduate. He grumbled. Oh, I suppose that's a good challenge. Hinata did her best to hide her relief that her growing love interest did not suddenly have a horrible sense of fashion. Instead, she just had to put up with this for 4 years and hopefully be rewarded with seeing him in an outfit that complemented his good looks. She blushed slightly at the thought of what he could look like at that time with his body well into puberty by then. She wondered about herself, and one thing she was sure about was that she'd get a small chest like most women in her clan. She was quite certain about that, deciding to ignore that nudging sensation in the back of her head that seemed to imply she was going to be proven quite wrong. It's kinda embarrassing, but I'll live with it. It's durable and big, so I probably won't grow into it for a good while. It'll be fun telling Hokage that I avoided squads of ANBU and Jounin wearing this. Naruto asserted with a foxy grin that would make his tenant proud. Hinata giggled at her friend's antics as they stepped into the building. Arriving at their assigned classroom, which was set up with desks cascading down in rows from the back wall, they saw it was beginning to fill up. They immediately picked 2 free seats in the middle several rows up. They then found Choji and Shikamaru sitting all the way back in the rear corner, far away from everyone else. Naruto smirked, knowing that it was so that lazy Nara could get more sleep while being disturbed the least. They found Ino standing at the front of the room, as if she seemed to be waiting for something. She noticed them and waved happily before suddenly showing an affronted frown. Forgetting her post, she stomped up next to where her fellow blonde was sitting. What the hell is that, Naruto? The platinum blonde bellowed with disgust, pointing rudely at his questionable choice in wardrobe. Everyone that was present in the room looked at the sheepish orange-clad boy. Shikamaru was heard saying, Troublesome blondes. Hee hee, it's a dare. I'm wearing this till I graduate, Naruto timidly said as he did his sheepish gesture while some people in the classroom sniggered. Why? You're pretty cute and you could get a lot of girls before you graduate if you dress cool, Ino retorted, slamming her hands on Naruto's desk as she leaned in close, making him blush slightly at this closeness and her compliment. Hinata perked up at Ino's words and displayed a flash of jealousy in her eyes at the notion of girls going after him. Ino didn't miss this and smirked slightly. Why would I care about that, Ino-chan? I'm here to train to be a shinobi. Hell, you know I've already started on that long before I even set foot in this building, Naruto retorted with a serious expression, looking offended at the notion he was interested in anything other than shinobi training in this sacred building. Hinata had to hide her victorious smile. Not only was that horrid outfit going to scare away image-conscious girls, he also wasn't going to be easily swayed into looking for any girl's affection. If everything went right, he'd be left all to her when the time for romance came. Well, the way you said that is pretty cool. Maybe that crappy outfit won't repel girls so much if you're still going to be cool about anything else, Ino retorted with a smirk, feeling a little warm inwardly upon seeing Naruto's serious gaze. She was also enjoying the slightly panicked look in Hinata's eyes as both girls noted several other girls in the classroom blushing at Naruto's serious but very handsome expression, despite his awful orange outfit. Before Naruto could reply, the entire room went silent. Ino perked up and turned away from her fellow blonde to see what was going on. All 3 friends found the source at the classroom's door. A raven-haired boy with onyx-black eyes stood there, his eyes carefully surveying the entire room. He displayed a disinterested and arrogant expression, as if he couldn't be bothered with anything that wasn't relevant to him. He was wearing a short-sleeved and high-collared black zip-up shirt with white shorts. His hair was styled to look like a duck's butt. If one were to look at the back of his shirt, it would display his clan symbol, denoting that he was an Uchiha. Is that Uchiha Sasuke? one girl said in a trembling voice. Ino let out a squeal as she and many other girls scrambled over to near Sasuke and asked him many questions. Hiding the slight pang in his chest at seeing his slight crush fawn over someone else, he amused himself with watching one of Sasuke's eyes twitch constantly at this smothering attention. He glanced over to his left to see Hinata sitting there, looking on with disinterest. "Not gonna go for duck but like everyone else?" he whispered near her ear, which nearly made her jump. After taking a second to think over what he said to her, she turned to him with a look of annoyance. Naruto was surprised to see that since it was rare for her to get cross with him. Hinata was a little angry with Naruto. She already matured quickly under the harsh environment within her clan. So much that she already developed a more advanced view on many subjects, including romance. While they were still too young to worry about that subject seriously, he was going to be her future love interest when they grew older. That much she knew about herself. For her love interest to suggest that she went after someone else, even if it was a joke, upset her greatly. "I have absolutely no interest in the Uchiha," she replied with such cold indifference Naruto had to check if he was covered in frost at that moment. It was as if she perfected the Hyuga composure. "I think I might have pissed her off somehow. I'd say, even that sent a shiver down my spine." "Sorry, Hinata-chan. I was just teasing." Hinata sighed and glanced away outside the window as the rest of the girls in the classroom continued to crowd around Sasuke while he tried to push his way through to his seat. Naruto silently cursed his stupidity and thought about what to say to his friend before a loud and high-pitched screech filled the classroom. "I know, pig. Get away from Sasuke-kun. You're bothering him." "Arg." A loud pained yell snapped the entire classroom from whatever they were doing to look toward the source. Naruto was tightly pressing his hands over his ears while Hinata was fussing over him, concerned for his pain. What the hell that all about? A pink-haired girl near Sasuke, who was also covering his ears, yelled at the interruption, not dropping her volume at all. "For fuck's sake. Be quiet." Naruto cried as he slammed his forehead onto the desk, followed by a jolt and a yelp from Hinata as she was a little distressed over his discomfort. It was at this point that he discovered that both he and Kurama were quite sensitive to high-pitched noises. The great fox was now roaring in pain and rolling all over in his mindscape with hands clamped tightly over her ears as well. "What the hell? I can't be that loud." The banshee kept the volume up as she looked around the classroom and saw several people covering their ears. Embarrassed, her mouth flapped like a fish before Ino's hand slapped over it. "Forehead, shut up. You're hurting Naruto with his sensitive hearing." The blonde hissed harshly to her friend/rival. She might have been competing for Sasuke, but she wasn't going to let anyone hurt her best friend, even if it was unintentional. That finally seemed to shut Harino Sakura up for the moment, much to the relief of everyone in the room, Naruto especially. Recovering, he scowled menacingly at the pink-haired girl, who recoiled under his icy glare. Kurama was now ranting in his head about exterminating all pink-haired humans in existence. He was sorely tempted to take that suggestion for a moment. "Ano, are you okay, Naruto-kun?" Hinata inquired of the blonde, her annoyance from earlier completely forgotten. "I'll barely live," he grumbled as his mood took a temporary dive from his failed joke and the banshee. They remained silent as more people filed into the classroom. A young female chunin stepped into the room and the entire room went silent. The instructor greeted and welcomed everyone with a long speech on this being the first step to becoming a shinobi of Konohagakure. As this was going on, Naruto gazed silently at Sasuke sitting in the next row down by the windows. He seems a little arrogant. Like I said in the past, he looks like he's focused on only one goal, which I assume to be avenging the loss of his clan. You see all those people throwing themselves at his feet with hope of becoming his friend, yet he doesn't care about that. I'd bet he got the civilian council backing his every move, yet he's just using them so he can get stronger any way possible until they ran out of options. He'd then betray them to look for more power. The blonde scowled. So he's likely getting advanced training. I suppose I'm lucky I have a powerful entity for a sensei. Not just a powerful entity. I am the almighty Kyubi no Kitsune. Bow before me, puny mortals. Kurama retorted with mock haughtiness. Naruto had to hold in a snort of laughter. Anyway, you should keep your true talents hidden. Don't use anything you've learned already until the lessons covering them come up. You're also forbidden from using Raging Fox in any taijutsu spar on the school grounds. It will hurt the students too much, and you'll garner too much attention with that. You will learn the academy style instead to fool them. In fact, you probably should think about keeping a low profile throughout the years. Stay middle of the ground in grades. I don't mind that. I don't need the attention that they're probably going to pile on that duckbutt to inflate his ego until it got too big to fit through the village's gates. Any particular reason why, though? Take a look at the instructor. Naruto shifted his eyes to look directly at the speaking Chunin. He narrowed his eyes upon noting the familiar expression of loathing and disgust on her face each time she glanced up at the blonde jinchuriki. They're going to find every reason that I'm you personified. I suppose being too smart or too advanced in skills will set them off, and they'll try to sabotage me at every turn. Right. I honestly don't care if my container do not come out top in this pathetic academy. If it was 50 years ago, when the standards for graduating were much higher, I probably would have cared a tiny bit. Naruto smirked. It's nice having a doting parent in my head. I doubt a parent would have you risk falling down a deep ravine on a regular basis, plan to have you go into a forest full of vicious monsters for training, teach you techniques that has the power to change the landscape for miles around, or especially have you dress up in that orange abomination for the next 4 years. Love you too, Foxy. He nearly chuckled aloud upon hearing a snort from his friend. 1 month later at the academy. Okay. It's time for our first exam. Don't turn your test over until I've finished passing them out, okay? The female instructor ordered as she moved around the classroom handing out papers. She shot a particularly nasty glare at Naruto as she handed him his copy. He gave an uncaring shrug, stapling 5 pairs of her rather racy panties, which he snatched from her home, to the classroom ceiling in full view of everyone a couple weeks ago likely didn't endear him to her. Hinata seemed rather put out for a few days as well. You should only touch me. I mean, you shouldn't touch any woman's underwear without permission, were her words as she blushed a brilliant shade of red that day. When the instructor gave the word to begin, he flipped the paper over. He narrowed his eyes immediately. He might have found the lectures boring, but he paid enough attention to know that his dear sensei didn't cover anything related to this exam's questions. In addition, they were much harder than what a first-year student was supposed to be studying. He still could answer all the questions easily, though. Just as he was contemplating this issue, a growl came from inside his head. So, they're going to try to sabotage my container anyway. Even if you answered them all correctly, they'd think you're me in human disguise. After all, there is no way dumb old Naruto could be this smart. I think I was just insulted. Whatever do you mean? She replied quickly in a far too innocent tone. He just decided to ignore this. I guess she's still a little pissed about the panties incident. Let's see. I'm sure this is a genjutsu. Why would she stupidly give me any evidence that I can take to Hokage to get her in trouble? There is no genjutsu. She replied in a perfect deadpan tone that broadcast exactly what she thought of the instructor's intelligence level. Naruto's eyes bulged out. What the hell? Is she really that stupid? He leveled a gaze with the Chunin at the front of the room and smirked evilly. She involuntarily shivered. Think I should pretend to have no clue and answer them wrong? You did want me to keep a low profile. No. I want you to keep a low profile, not be deemed dumb enough to not notice an obvious switcheroo. If you let this go by, they will keep doing this and it'll get annoying. Make an example of her so other instructors won't try the same thing. Excuse me, sensei. I believe you gave me the wrong copy. These questions have never been covered in your lectures, Naruto innocently said, and everyone in the class perked their heads up, interested in the development. The instructor looked offended, but inwardly she was sweating. It's not my fault you didn't pay attention to my lectures. Now complete the exam quietly or I will have you leave for disrupting the test. Naruto allowed a cold smile to slowly form that chilled her. She was now feeling like she just blew her chance to back out. If you're so sure this is the correct exam, I'm taking this to the headmaster of this school, who happens to be Hokage-sama, and have him explain to me why I was given a much more difficult test than the rest of the class without any prior warning. Naruto declared with his icy cold eyes seemingly piercing through the profusely sweating instructor. He merely stood with the paper in hand and stepped out of the classroom toward the Hokage's office. The entire room broke into murmurs while Hinata, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji were glaring angrily at the instructor. She sank down to her knees in defeat as she briefly thought that perhaps she let her hatred for the Kyuubi consume her, and now she was going to pay dearly. The next day, a new instructor came into the classroom. He flinched under Naruto's steely gaze as he remembered the Hokage's promise of pain if he did not do his job properly. He didn't doubt that after he heard the previous instructor was permanently busted back down to genin. 2 months later at the academy, it was a beautiful spring day in May as all the first-year students mingled outside on the sparring grounds next to the academy building. They were enjoying their lunch break between learning the academy style and sparring with it after the meal. It was going to be the students' first time sparring with their partners. "So what are you going to do, Naruto?" Shikamaru mumbled as he made a move on the improvised shogi board drawn in the dirt between him and Naruto. They were playing a quick shogi match before the instructor would come out to end the break. Hinata was sitting next to Naruto as she watched the match in fascination, while Ino and Choji were making small talks behind the pineapple-haired boy. "Huh! I'm fortifying my Mino Castle defense against your offensive," was the other player's reply as he moved one of his pieces to block his opponent's advance. Naruto had improved tremendously in his shogi playing. He actually won his first match against Shikamaru a few months ago, much to the Nara's dismay. Now he usually won 3 out of 10 times at this point, while consistently challenging Shikamaru's planning capacity each match. "Troublesome, I meant the spars. We know you're working on that style of yours. We've never actually seen it in action. Are you going to use it?" The lazy genius drawled with feigned disinterest as he made another sneaky move on the board, much to his opponent's chagrin. To be honest, Shikamaru really wanted to see how strong Naruto truly was. He knew the blonde was well beyond everyone, even Sasuke. In this class, with the way he carried himself lately, he might be a lazy ass and he'd find it troublesome to tell anyone otherwise. But he rather disliked not having all the data on anything that interested him. "Sorry, Shika. I'd rather not," Naruto replied apologetically as he made a sneaky move of his own. Shikamaru's eye twitched before he went into his now too common thinking pose. "Ano, why not? I have seen you practice with it, and you are very far along with it. I am confident you can beat anyone here." Hinata interjected shly. "Including you?" Naruto retorted cheekily. The Hyuga blushed, but gave him a mock glare with puffed cheeks. Chuckling at his friend's cute reaction, he waved it off. "Nah. I don't need the attention, and it'll seriously hurt anyone here if I go too far. Also, Sasuke team will be on my ass 24/7 to fight him if I show off too much. I'll just stick with the academy style and see how far I can get with that." Hinata nodded, a little dejected that she won't get to see her friend kick some ass. She was brought out of her thoughts upon hearing Shikamaru's sharp exhalation as he came out of his thinking pose. "Damn it, troublesome. You win. I can't think of any move from this point that will get me out of trouble." Naruto punched his arm into the air in victory. "Yada! My record's 23 wins and 126 losses now." Everyone but Shikamaru's sweat dropped at their friend's delight over such a lopsided win-loss record. "I doubt anyone will find that impressive," Ino said dully from behind Shikamaru, happy to be done waiting for the boys to finish that boring game. "Well, imagine this. If it was against someone like that Inuzuka, it'd really suck so badly. I'd think something's wrong with my head for losing to him so much," Naruto teased, getting a light sweat on the back of his head from Hinata. "Be nice, Naruto-kun. But if it was against a genius like Shika here, it's impressive. Tell me, did any of you win even once against him?" Naruto finished, barely noticing the sweat. Choji, Ino, and Hinata flinched and slumped to their floors with rain clouds hanging over their heads. "Troublesome, do you have to be so brutal?" Shikamaru grumbled as he let out a yawn. Naruto just shot him a foxy smirk. "Lunch break's over. Time for the sparring matches," the instructor yelled as he stepped out of the building toward a large circle of bricks buried into the ground. Everyone gathered around the sparring ring at this point, and the instructor started things off with picking 2 random students to go up against each other for 1 3-minute round each pair. It went on for a while with Hinata, Choji, Sasuke, Ino, and Shikamaru winning their matches rather easily. Finally it was Naruto's turn up against the same Inuzuka he spoke of earlier. This brown-haired boy was wearing a simple shirt and shorts with the red Inuzuka clan fangs tattooed on his cheeks. He was just introduced to his companion dog, Akamaru, and they haven't trained together enough to be able to fight alongside each other effectively yet. Due to that, the tiny Akamaru stayed on the sideline. "Yeah! Looks like I got an easy one!" Inuzuka Kiba exclaimed loudly as he stepped up across from the waiting Naruto. "Still as smelly as ever, dog breath," the blonde retorted as he pinched his nose. He really did smell strongly of wet dogs. Kiba immediately growled at the insult. The instructor shouted start, just as Kiba leaped toward Naruto, his sharp canines bared in a snarl. Naruto simply sidestepped the lunge and countered with a basic palm strike at the Inuzuka's exposed side. Kiba let a pained gasp escape from his lips as he blindly swung his hand back around, its sharpened fingernails aimed at Naruto's head. The blonde effortlessly grabbed the hand and pulled the Inuzuka backward across to flip him over and onto the ground with a loud thud. Kiba grunted painfully as he landed hard on his back. "Damn you!" he cursed as he recovered and shot to his feet, only to have a foot already meeting his chest as soon as he stood up. He was sent flying back from the unexpected thrust kick out of the ring, and then tumbled to a stop. Naruto was already moving toward the dazed Inuzuka when he was stopped. Akamaru had moved in between him and his partner, barking and growling protectively. The surprised instructor decided to stop the spar at that point and unenthusiastically awarded Naruto the win. Kiba slowly sat up grumbling about his luck, but was surprised when he saw an offered hand in front of him. He glanced up to find Naruto standing over him with a friendly smile. "No hard feelings, I hope?" he said easily. Kiba eyed him with suspicion for a moment before sighing and took the offered hand to get to his feet. "I still want to kick your ass," he retorted with a challenging smile. Naruto laughed freely. "I'll be looking forward to more matches with you then, dog breath." He shot back before walking off with a wave over his shoulder. His friends joined him since that was the last spar for the day and the class was over now. The students who watched were impressed while Sasuke eyed Naruto suspiciously. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow as he walked alongside the smiling blonde. That was a very sharp and precise use of the standard kata. It shows how much he trained on his actual style if he was able to use the standard style so easily already. He thought, filling in more blanks about the mystery that was Uzumaki Naruto. Next month in Hokage's office, one day before Naruto leaves for his first training trip, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, the most powerful shinobi in the village, also known as the Kami of Shinobi, was rubbing his temples and sighing heavily as an enraged ANBU stood in front of the desk, ranting about a certain someone's latest prank. Uzumaki Naruto was sitting on the floor next to the ranting ANBU, and he was tied up tightly with rope. He had on a shit-eating grin. "He broke into our locker room and switched out some of our uniforms and masks. Considering the fact that the HQ is actually supposed to be hidden, this is a serious breach of security. We have to do something about this damn brat." That was supposed to be a secret? Every villager knew it out by watching where the ANBU hang around certain buildings. At least put a damn genjutsu up or something, Naruto retorted loudly at the very animated ANBU. Hiruzen sighed heavily again. "What happened with the uniforms and masks, Naruto-kun?" "I do not see anything different," he tiredly said as he indicated the normal-looking ANBU next to the boy. He almost regretted his question as he watched Naruto's grin grow sinister. He easily felt his 3 hidden ANBU guards in the office shifting uncomfortably. "I only picked 3 to victimize, have fun with. You probably can guess who." His surrogate grandson replied ominously. It only took the old man a second to understand his implications. He snapped his fingers. No one appeared from the shadows in this room. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow and displayed a too neutral smile that made everyone shiver. "Now, I am willing to give all 3 of you one more chance. If any one of you do not come out now, I will burst all of you back down to Genin, and doing only Torah missions for a year. Is that clear?" Naruto snickered as the third easily felt the fear and shame radiating off his hidden guards. He took a moment before snapping his fingers again. All 3 hidden guards appeared behind the tied-up Naruto at the same time. The third winced as he raised a hand to block the blindingly bright colors radiating off the ANBU's new uniforms. The one on the left was wearing a bright neon yellow ANBU uniform with a generic white mask that had a cartoonish scribbling of a Heno Heno Mahiji on it. The one in the center was all neon pink and his generic mask scribbling showed a perverted expression, a lecherous leer, peering eyes, and rosy cheeks. The last one on the right wore neon green. Her mask showed a scribbling of an awesome face. It took the Hokage all he had to suppress his laughter at the ridiculous display in front of him. Naruto didn't have the same reservation as he laughed uproariously at the sight of the 3 ANBU wearing nothing but eye-searing colors. Even the agent who caught the boy had to work to hold his laughter back. "Our apologies, Hokage-sama. As you can see, it was difficult for us to come out here." The one in the center spoke quietly as he glared daggers at the laughing blonde. "You weren't able to find any spare?" The third inquired as he did everything to keep his composure on the inside. "There weren't anything else in the locker room we could use and we could not afford to miss our shift, so we were forced to use what we had." The neon green female ANBU with long purple hair spoke up. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at Naruto for an explanation. No worries, Hokage Gigi. I hid the stuff I switched out inside the storage room next door to the locker room. They'll find everything there. The ANBU let out a sigh of relief. Very well. I'll take care of Naruto-kun. You may go back to work. The third spoke dismissively. The three neon-colored ANBU prepared to leave the office to change, while the normal-looking ANBU already vanished into thin air. Where are you going? I didn't say you could leave your posts. Remain like that for the rest of the day. In fact, don't even change until after you have gotten home from your shift. The Hokage ordered with a pleasant smile. The three ANBU flinched in horror. That's cold, old man. Naruto observed with an amused grin. The old man raised a finger to point at him. If they weren't able to detect you breaking into a building buzzing with the best trained nin station every 20 feet in that bright orange outfit, then either they need to be trained some more or you deserve an award. Maybe they'll learn from your example briefly, Naruto-kun. He smirked as he watched his guards glare and project their killing intent at the tied-up boy, who was getting nervous. There's no need to piss off people who can hide in shadows and stab things with pointy things. They're going to come for me in the middle of the night. The neon green ANBU's hand twitched slightly as if she was about to reach for her sword. I am sure they won't, especially after they hear what I have thought up for your punishment. I was thinking about having one of my former students join you on this training trip alongside Tenzo-san, who I have explained as having the unique ability to subdue any Biju's chakra if it gets out of control. However, I honestly do not think he will be needed until the next break, and I could not find him in time anyway, so I will be replacing him with a certain someone. He's a taijutsu specialist who would be able to help you improve your taijutsu when you're taking breaks from bringing out the Kyuubi's chakra. The Hokage spoke neutrally, working to keep a full-blown dastardly smirk from forming on his face. The three ANBU's demeanor changed completely at the mention of the taijutsu specialist, and they were grinning evilly behind their masks. Naruto seemed to think nothing was wrong though. A taijutsu specialist, huh? I don't see how that'd be punishment. He cocked his head. You will find out, young boy, when you meet your two guardians tomorrow at the main gate. The third replied with a pleasant smile. Later that night, one Mitarashi Enko almost had to be admitted into the hospital after she hurt her stomach and facial muscles laughing so hard at her roommate's bright neon green uniform and mask. Next morning at the Hokage's office, Sarutobi Hiruzen yawned loudly as he shook the tiredness out of his old body walking into the office to start his work for the day. Before sitting at the desk, he opened the window facing the village's main gate in the distance and sat down. He only had to wait a few minutes before a man's ear-splitting voice shook the quiet morning air. YOSH. Your flame of youth is burning so brightly if you are training at such a young age. We shall train together as hard as we can for the next 3 months and make your youthfulness burn white hot. Followed by a child's horrified yell. Arg! Don't let the caterpillars on your eyes near me. Damn you, old man. Hiruzen leaned back into his chair and let a smile grow slowly on his face. Ah, music to my ear. 3 months later, Tenzo, a brown-haired ANBU with a somewhat plain-looking face framed by a silver hapuri, was standing in front of the Hokage's desk in the office giving his report. Naruto-san trained himself nearly into the ground every day over the past 3 months. After spending half of each day trying to control the Kyuubi's chakra, he spent the other half practicing what he learned from the Kyuubi overnight and getting into taijutsu spars with me and Gai-san. He never won, but we have seen vast improvements compared to when he left with us 3 months ago. The Hokage nodded his head, indicating for Tenzo to continue. In the final spar against Gai-san before we left, we allowed Naruto-san to augment his new taijutsu style with the Kyuubi's power. I carefully monitored the battle so I could interfere with my ceiling at any time if need be. The difference was incredible. It actually ended up with Gai-san getting several minor injuries before Naruto-san was knocked out. Gai-san still did not go all out, but for a 9-year-old boy to able to give an elite jounin like the Green Beast of Konoha a little trouble for 30 minutes is nothing short of amazing. The third raised an eyebrow. How much of the Kyuubi's power is he able to control? He is able to go up to 2 tails of the Kyuubi's chakra in a red shroud that completely surrounds his body, and it's shaped to look like a fox. In that mode, he was as fast as a high chunin. If all he focused on was running, his strength increased exponentially. He recovers from most minor injuries almost instantly, and the shroud defends him against low-level jutsu. He is also able to mold the chakra shroud into forming claws that can extend from his body to reach long-distance targets. All of this was able to go up to 30 minutes of usage in which he was completely stable with no risk of losing control. After that, the malevolent chakra will begin to hurt his body, so we restricted him to only 30 minutes of the chakra's usage per day. From what I documented of Naruto-san's progress, he managed to control 4 levels of the demon fox's power. Didn't you say 2 taels worth of chakra? There is also a tailless mode in which we did not see the red chakra surrounding him, but he still released the Kyuubi's killing intent and gained a significant speed and strength boost over his normal attributes. Not to mention at that level and higher, he displayed more defined Kyuubi-like features like red eyes with slitted pupils, extended canines, larger and darker whiskers, and sharp claw-like fingernails. Below that level, he is able to channel a small bit of the chakra to his eyes for improved vision, especially at nighttime where he could see everything as if it was daytime, and he can also use the chakra to extend his fingernails into claws or retract them. The chakra used for these functions was completely undetectable, so he is able to use his eyes or claws anytime he wishes to without worrying anyone around him with the Kyuubi's presence. The third leaned back into his chair, wondering if he was letting Naruto go too far with the training too fast. Tenzo-san, was there any doubt, even a tiny amount, from either you or Gai-san that Naruto remained completely himself? Tenzo shook his head with a smile. After spending 3 months with him, I can say with 100% confidence he is still the Uzumaki Naruto you know. In fact, he's planning a PR dash. He was interrupted by the office's door banging loudly open to reveal a horror unlike anything the third had seen in his long life. Naruto walked into the room. That was normal enough itself, but everything ended after that. He was sporting a horrid green one-piece spandex with an orange sash around his waist and orange leg warmers. His blonde hair was cut and smoothed into a bowl-cut style like Mato Guy, and he even sported 2 very thick and fuzzy blonde eyebrows above his blue eyes. To make it worse, he opened his mouth. "YOSH! I have returned from 3 months of making my flames of youth burn white hot. I have never felt more youthful than I am right now." The Hokage sat stock still in his chair with a dumb expression on his face, as if he was trying his best to unsee what had been wrought before him. He did not see Tenzo slap his forehead. "Your youthfulness burns brightly compared to mine. I shall train myself as hard as I can until my youthfulness can match your white-hot youth." Mato Guy's voice boomed throughout the office as a tall black-haired man in the same green spandex with a jounin vest worn over it, and light green legwarmers ran into the room to stand next to Naruto. He also sported the same horrid bowl cut and thick black eyebrows. Naruto turned to Guy. "Shiai-sensei, I shall make my youthfulness burn even more brightly if you do that. If I cannot do it, I'll run 10 laps around the land of fire. Naruto-san, your youth will burn even more with that. If I cannot succeed in matching your youthfulness, I shall run 10 laps around the entire elemental nations." The entire office went deathly silent for a moment, until a thump was heard. Everyone looked toward the desk to see the third laying his forehead on it, whispering something no one could make out. "It's my fault. I was too harsh on Naruto-kun before he left, and now he's turned into a mini-guy. What horrors have I wrought? I'm so sorry, Minato-kun. I shall redeem myself by ending their lives, then commit seppuku." An uproarious laughter erupted throughout the office, causing him to raise his head. He saw Guy and Naruto on their backs laughing. "We sure got you, old man!" Guy exclaimed before laughing some more with the Naruto/Guy hybrid. Hisai twitched. "What is going on? Is this a prank, and why have you joined in, Guy-san?" "I'm not him," the Guy imposter replied as he got up before puffing into some smoke. After a second, the smoke cleared away to reveal a regular-looking Naruto in his orange jumpsuit. "I forgot to mention, Naruto-san here has learned Kage Bunshin no Jutsu from the Kyuubi, and he can use it in combination with Henge with frightening ease." Tenzo suddenly interjected before there was any further confusion. As if on cue, the Guy/Naruto hybrid released its Henge to reveal another normal-looking Naruto. A cold chill went deep into the very essence of the third's being as he realized the implications of multiple solid copies of Naruto, each with his intelligence and mischievousness. Terrified of that notion, he quickly pushed it aside, and made a mental note to hurry up and pick his replacement as soon as possible. Including the 3 guards hidden inside the office, the entire ANBU force, even the ones out of the village on missions, got an ice-cold chill down their spines as they had the feeling their greatest nemesis ever suddenly got much more powerful. "Which one of you is the original?" the Hokage erratically asked as he wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead. The one that was Guy raised his hand to show his fingernails sharpening into claws. He then stabbed them lightly into the other Naruto to pop it. I'm back, Hokage Gigi. The blonde exclaimed with a foxy grin. The Hokage returned the grin with an uncertain smile. I am glad to see you are doing well. Tenzo-san here was telling me how much of a menace how much of a good shinobi you will grow into. Hee, I can't believe how much stronger I got. It's thanks to Guy-sensei and Tenzo-sensei here that I came this far. I actually almost became a mini-guy a few times though. Everyone in the office, including the hidden ANBU, shuddered. It's like he has some way of brainwashing people. I hope no one else will fall for his enthusiasm. Everyone shuddered again. Ahem, that won't happen, hopefully. So you are able to use the Kage Bunshin. How many copies are you able to create, Naruto-kun? The Hokage inquired. I was able to go up to 200, but they're pathetically weak with so little chakra, and they won't last long. I can make 25 clones that last all day and they have about the same strength as me. Though they still pop after one hit. Very good. I dare say you are already ready to graduate with what you have learned. You're welcome to test out early if you'd like. The old man was not surprised to see his surrogate grandson shake his head no without any hesitation. No thanks, Hokage Gigi. The fox says I'm still not ready, and I'd rather enjoy my time with my friends before we all have to do missions and stuff. For the next year, I'm just going to focus on learning more about elemental jutsu and figure out my nature affinities. Fox also said I'd likely have a natural affinity for fire due to her chakra, but she believes there will be 1 or 2 more. The Hokage nodded his head. I'm glad you made it back here safely. I'll let you go home, as I'm sure you'd like to rest before the academy starts again in 2 days. Before you go though, I would like to inquire of you and Tenzo-san on the whereabouts of Guy-san. He usually is the first one here upon returning from any mission, expressing his enthusiasm. Tenzo let out an exasperated sigh. Naruto struck his usual sheepish pose. That'd be my fault, Hokage Gigi. The old man raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting an explanation. I got tired of his youthfulness on the return trip, so I challenged him to keep quiet the rest of the way or he'd run 5 laps around the land of fire. Needless to say, he failed miserably. Before we could tell him it was a joke, he took off with inhuman speed and we never found him. He's probably scaring the Kumo patrols shitless running along the lightning border at this moment. The god of shinobi thumped his forehead on the desk while the hidden ANBU could not help but chuckle at the comedy they were watching. On the streets heading toward the Hyuga compound, man, I really missed the glares of hatred from these lovely villagers. Naruto thought sarcastically as he walked through the village surrounded by glaring people. He heard whispers of the demons back from wherever he disappeared to. I was hoping he'd stay away, and more. Kurama spoke up. Oh well. Nothing we can do about that. Listen, Naruto. I never had a chance to say this, but I want you to know I am proud and astonished at how quickly you have learned to control my chakra. I never would have expected you to get up to 2 tails in just 3 months. Not to mention you are doing well with your taijutsu and kenjutsu training. Thanks, Kurama. It means a lot to me to hear you say that. Unfortunately, I'm afraid we will hit a brick wall next break. You will obtain 3 tails with no problem, but 4th and beyond is when it's going to be tough. At the 4th tail and above you will gain more of the powerful abilities I use, like the Bijudama. However, the chakra shroud will become so malevolent and dense that it'll hurt your body right away and you will find it almost impossible to keep control of your senses. If you go on a rampage, almost no one will be able to stop you, not even that wood ghoul. Naruto frowned at that. That sucks. I guess we'll have to make do with mastering 3 tails to the best of our abilities and leave it at that until we figure out something in the future. I'm not saying we give up on this. There are options we can try next summer to see if they'll work. And what if they fail? What'll happen? Pain. Extreme and all-encompassing pain. So much pain that you'll wish you were dead. Kurama replied with no hesitation. Geez, no need to sugarcoat it. Tell me how bad it really will be. Naruto retorted with sarcasm while his tenant snickered. I never said it'd be easy. If what that old fart said about his student coming along to help you next year is true, it should help you in your progress. You know of him? Yes. His name is Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin. Naruto raised both his eyebrows. Seriously? I read about him in the history books. He's supposed to be very strong, that's not all. You're more related to him than you realize. Huh, he's also supposed to be your godfather. I heard your parents appoint him as one when I was sealed in your mother. Naruto stopped all of a sudden in the middle of the street, surprising several villagers nearby. He stood there for a minute as he slowly took in the revelation as some of the villagers looked on with curiosity. He started walking again, with a cold frown and his fists clenched tightly at his sides as he continued on his way to the Hyuga compound. When I meet him, I am going to kick that son of a bitch in the balls first thing. Kurama snickered at that possibility. A few minutes later, his anger dissipated. He decided it wasn't worth fuming over the latest revelation if Jiraiya wasn't going to be around to take his well-deserved punishment. He arrived at the gate of the Hyuga compound. The guards quickly allowed him inside, used to his frequent presence by now. Naruto made his way toward the main family's house. He wondered how Hinata, Hanabi, and Hayashi were doing after 3 months. He remembered that Hinata became distressed when he told her that he would be out of the village. Hanabi's reaction was more extreme as she refused to let him go for nearly all day on the day before his departure. They all but ordered him to stop by the compound as soon as he returned. He smiled at the memory of Hanabi threatening him with bodily harm if he upset Hinata by not making a beeline for the compound from the Hokage's office as soon as possible. He knew the younger Hyuga would be just as upset herself, if more. He frowned as he felt someone's cold fury directed at him. He shifted his eyes to the right to find the source. Hyuga Niji stepped out of the shadow under a tree near the main house's entrance. The blonde stopped in his track, his hands still at his sides as he glared directly at a pair of cold white eyes. They saw each other several times in passing, but they haven't directly faced each other since Niji's brutal attack a year and a half ago. "Is there something you need, Niji-san?" Naruto said coolly as he kept his icy gaze leveled with Niji's. "You look much stronger compared to the weakling I faced last time, Uzumaki-sama." "How is that possible?" Niji's tone was just as cold and calculating as his eyes. "Training and hard work, that's all. I feel like I could kick your ass right now." "Too bad Hayashi-sama banned us from dueling," Naruto retorted with a nonchalant shrug. Niji smirked. "I am not concerned about you catching up to me. Fate has decided I am the stronger of us and I will defeat you when we do have our battle." Yeah. I don't believe in all that fate crap, and I'll prove that by taking in all your anger and returning it tenfold. Be ready because I'm constantly getting stronger. Can you afford to rely on your fate bailing you out when you find out you never really worked hard enough to back up your talk? Niji narrowed his eyes with a silent snarl while Naruto smirked darkly as he broke off the conversation and continued his walk toward Hayashi's house. The Hyuga prodigy clenched his fists as he stormed off toward his residence. "I will do everything I can to prove him otherwise. I will make myself stronger and faster, for I am fated to win." A moment later, his confrontation with Niji forgotten, Naruto stood at the front door to Hayashi's house. He knocked once before he heard some thumping and rumbling, and it was getting louder. His sweat dropped for an instant before the front door flew open to launch a tiny Hyuga girl into the blonde's stomach. He could only expel air from his lungs involuntarily as he caught the black-haired cannonball. "Oni-chan! You're back! Did you come here straight from Hokage-sama's office like I told you to?" Hanabi excitedly yapped as she wrapped her arms around his waist for a tight hug. Naruto chuckled and patted her back. "I did, little firecracker. Looks like you're very happy I followed your orders," he teased after catching his breath. "That was for Nei-chan's sake. I could wait until tomorrow, but she would be heartbroken if she heard you waited." Hanabi defended with a blush as she let go of his waist. "I would have been fine, Hanabi-chan. He might have needed his rest upon returning from the trip, you know." Hinata admonished her little sister softly as she appeared at the doorway, but it was clear she was happy to see her friend as soon as possible too. Her attire hadn't changed much, but her hair had grown longer as it now reached her shoulders. Naruto had to admit she was looking cuter the longer her hair grew. "Uzumaki-san, it is good to see you again after so long. Please come in." Hayashi appeared behind Hinata and gave a bow. Naruto returned the bow as he and Hanabi went inside with the rest. A few minutes later, they were seated at the dining table enjoying some tempura and stir-fried vegetables cooked by Hinata. The children were chatting about what they did over the past 3 months. "And I was able to pull a fast one on Gai-sensei when he thought he hit me, but it was really a shadow clone that I substituted with." Naruto was recounting his stories, carefully leaving out any mention of Kurama and her chakra. "Ano, what is a shadow clone?" Hinata spoke up softly and Hanabi looked just as curious. Hayashi raised an eyebrow at the notion of a child learning a jounin-level kenjutsu. Naruto looked toward the clan head as if to silently ask permission. He got a nod. It's a jutsu I learned from my sensei. Not many can use this because of the high chakra requirement, but I have plenty to spare. Naruto explained as he formed a cross shape with his hands and 2 fingers each. A puff of smoke appeared next to him, surprising both Hinata and Hanabi. The smoke cleared to reveal a perfect clone of Naruto waving at the girls. The girls looked shocked and could only dumbly wave back. Hayashi smirked a little. Is that a solid copy? Hinata squeaked as her Byakugan activated to check. That's right, Hinata-chan. I can do the same attacks as boss if I was given enough chakra, and I can also think independently from him if I don't have an order to carry out. The clone spoke up. I also can learn whatever it learns when it dispels. Perfect for training, spying, reading, etc. The only thing that can't be transferred back to me is muscle training. I will have to do that myself. A major disadvantage is that the clone pops after 1 hit. The original explained as he demonstrated by lightly tapping the clone on its head to make it disappear in a puff of smoke. If I use a lot of chakra, the clone can last longer and might be able to take a couple more hits before dispelling. Hinata sat still as the implications of multiple Narutos running around went through her mind. Unlike the perturbed reactions from the Hokage and Anbu, it made her happy. So happy she promptly fainted and fell backward onto the floor from her kneeling position at the table with a silly grin plastered on her face. Hinata-chan/Nei-chan. Naruto and Hanabi cried alarmingly as they moved around to hover over Hinata's form. Hayashi almost facepalmed as he seemed to have understood exactly what went through his daughter's mind. She's starting out so young, like my beloved Hitomi. Uzumaki-san, it seems I will fear for your innocence sooner rather than later. An hour later, our blonde hero was found sitting on the living room's sofa next to Hayashi reading a scroll in his chair. His right eye was twitching with annoyance. 2 reasons for this were found in an indigo-haired girl sleeping with her head on his lap, her arms tightly wrapped round his right thigh, and her younger black-haired sister resting her head against his left shoulder with both of her arms wrapped tightly around his left arm. Both of them cuddled up tightly against him as if refusing to let him have a chance to slip out. What's with Hyuga girls using me as their personal teddy bear? Naruto grumbled. Hayashi glanced up from the scroll with a small smirk. Perhaps it is part of your charm, Uzumaki-san. Even your servant looked at me as if I'm her favorite stuffed animal. Hayashi raised an eyebrow. Tomo-san is 38 years old. Exactly. Not just these girls, but other Hyuga females of all ages too. A while ago, I even saw one of the elders do a double take in my direction with that lovely-dovey look in her eyes. That must have been my aunt. She is rather odd. My apologies. Naruto gave a slight shudder. Hayashi shook his head slightly with an amused smirk. A comfortable silence followed, with the 2 girls' gentle breathing the only noise being made in the living room. Naruto's expression turned somewhat melancholy, as he seemed to be stuck on a subject in his mind. Hayashi-sama, are you really okay with your daughters being friends with me? The village pariah and the jinchuriki? Hayashi raised his head. What has brought that up, Uzumaki-san? With your position in the shinobi force, it shouldn't be hard for you to learn what I was really doing the past 3 months. I was learning to control the Kyuubi's chakra. Hayashi nodded his head in affirmation. So I am trying to control the wild and terrible chakra of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the bogeyman of this entire village's dreams for the past 8 years. It could get dangerous for me and my friends around me one day. Hayashi put his scroll down as he leaned back into the chair deep in thought. After a long moment, he spoke up. I will admit I did think about possible situations between you and my daughters that would not end favorably for everyone involved. However, these are just mere speculations. I feel if one of these situations ever came to pass, we all would deal with whatever may happen at that time. Until then, I know for certain that my daughters implicitly trust you and are perfectly happy having you around. You are also doing wonders for Hinata's confidence issues. I don't see any reason why I have to be premature and try to change anything between the 3 of you. You're even directing my nephew's anger into improving himself constantly after what I just saw before dinner. Naruto flinched before doing his sheepish gesture with his free hand. You saw? My eyes are not all-seeing for nothing. Hayashi retorted with a smirk before continuing. Uzumaki-san, my feeling is that you are doing a great service to this village by keeping the Kyuubi contained within you. That should have been good enough for you, but you're going above and beyond the call of duty by learning to be in control of the chakra, so may be able to grow stronger to protect people you consider important, even with the risk of anything going wrong in that quest. Naruto sat there with a blank face as he looked into Hayashi's sincere eyes. After a moment, he allowed a gentle smile to grow on his face. Thanks, Hayashi-sama. It's the first time anyone in this village ever described my situation like that. I feel much better. I'll be careful about how I progress in my training, though. For everyone's sake. Hayashi allowed a small smile as he nodded. Another long silence followed as he returned to reading more of the scroll. Naruto grew bored with the two girls still clutching onto him. Let's see how I should escape this booby trap of dangerous juken strikes, he mumbled as Hayashi raised an eyebrow, his eyes never leaving the scroll. I would think you would understand by now, Uzumaki-san. It is not possible to escape my daughters without suffering a strike or two in painful places, he dryly said. He could feel Naruto's foxy grin out of view. I never give up. Besides, I have something new to try, Hayashi-sama. Hayashi heard a slight popping sound. Intrigued, he looked over to see a confused-looking clone of Naruto standing behind the sofa that the original and his daughters were on. Naruto then did a simple series of hand seals and there was another puff of smoke. It was not hard for Hayashi to see that the original did a kawarimi with the clone, leaving the poor clone to precariously hold his daughter's dangerous sleeping habits at bay. The original displayed a triumphant grin, while the clone shifted nervously under the girl's tightening grips. That takes care of that. Hold down the fort for me, would ya, buddy? The original patted his clone's head, which glowered at the boss's cruelty. Hayashi smirked as he saw an idea clearly form in the clone's head, and it showed an evil smirk. It then did the same series of seals and another puff of smoke followed. "Huh!" was Naruto's intelligent reply as he found himself back under the two girls' clutches and the clone was standing behind the sofa with a shit-eating grin. "It's you who should be holding down the fort, boss." "Ja-ni," the clone said cheerfully before dispelling itself. It took a moment for Naruto to realize that his clone pulled a fast one on its own creator. An annoyed frown formed on the blonde's face. "Just why can't I get away from here?" he moaned in dejection. "Ah, another pleasant evening for me to remember," Hayashi amusedly thought as he watched Naruto get flustered under his daughter's clutches. 5 days later at the main gate into Konoha, newly promoted Chunin Suzumo and Kotetsu, who would soon be known as the Eternal Chunins, in the future, were spending their day at the main gate's guardhouse. "Man, this is bullshit. We finally get promoted after 5 years of being genin. We even came close to being called the Eternal Genins and they stick us in this damn guardhouse." Kotetsu complained. "Shut up. You should see this as a great honor to serve the village by protecting it from hostiles trying to sneak past us," Izumo retorted harshly. Before they were able to argue further, they noticed a large party of foreign neens with a man in a large official-looking haori and a prepubescent dirty blonde-haired girl walking alongside him at the front of the party. The guards remained silent but on guard for any possible attack as the foreign neens stopped at a short distance before the gate, allowing the leader and the young girl to walk up to the guardhouse alone, an apparent attempt to calm any tension. "I am the 4th Kazekage and this is my daughter Sabaku no Temari." The veiled man in a robe and hat similar to the Hokage's, only with dark blue accents instead of red, introduced himself and the blonde girl. The young but pretty girl with her hair tied into 4 pigtails shot a hard look at the guards before nodding stiffly. The Kazekage continued. "We come from Sunagakure, and I was invited here by Hokage Dano to discuss several items about our alliance. Here is the message from Hokage Dano." Izumo nervously took the scroll to open it slowly. He easily confirmed the Hokage's handwriting and his official seal on the letter. He rolled it back up and handed it back to the Kazekage respectfully. "Welcome to Konohagakure, Kazekage-sama and Sabaku-sama. I will escort you and your party to meet up with the Hokage. He is expecting you," he stiffly said with a respectful bow. The Kazekage simply nodded for the guard to continue. Izumo turned around and led the Suna party into the village, leaving Kotetsu alone at the guardhouse. He let out a sigh. Well, that was interesting. That blonde girl's would have been very cute if she'd been closer to our age, though she looked like she'd rather be anywhere but here next to her father. Wonder why that is. He mused while he was moving to get back to his seat. As he was about to sit down, he noticed something far down the road from the gate, a green speck on the horizon. Curious, the guard decided to walk down the road to get a closer look at the odd sight. Realization slowly crept on him as he got closer and broke into an easy run. Upon arriving at the green speck, He finally confirmed this to be the beaten and battered body of Mado Guy. What the hell happened here, Guy-san? Kotetsu inquired with worry as he bent down to the body to check for any wound. There were none, but the body stunk as if it acclimated a week's worth of sweat without cleaning up. Ugh, my youthfulness is rather drained. Water, please. Guy managed to get out. Kotetsu sighed and shrugged as he reached for his canteen to pour some water through Guy's parched lips. My advice to you, young one, don't ever challenge Uzumaki Naruto to any contest of youthfulness. He will beat you. Guy painfully warned as if he was drawing his last breath and trying to identify whoever murdered him. Kotetsu shook his head and laughed. That blonde brat. The entire village could have warned you about that before you did whatever you tried with him. Don't mess with the prankster king of Konoha. After a few minutes, Guy finally regained enough strength to stand up and be helped into the village by Kotetsu, mumbling about depleted youth the whole way.